Hello everyone, welcome to What If Deku was the subject of GLaDOS from Portal 2 Movie 1. Before we start, please go support PresidentThanos for writing that awesome fanfic. While her purpose is to test and she still wishes to do so, GLaDOS found that many of the test subjects kept within Old Aperture were long dead or at risk of dying as soon as she took them out, and with Izuku as her last remaining subject in New Aperture, she decided to let him bring her to the outside, her last piece of humanity. Discovered by the mute Chell centuries ago, wanting him to live his life, and a side which only wished for testing to see what these quirks were that had appeared. Join them as they become heroes and prove why Aperture's technology is superior to anything else. OFA is given to Ejirou Kirishima. Chapter 1 Last Subject. Deep under the ground laid a large facility, one of a company long forgotten, long since wiped from existence. Within this facility was a machine, though it wasn't all she was, at least, not anymore. Long before the specific day, a person this machine hated, despised with every ounce of her being, showed her what humanity she had left, and the machine let that human go. Now the machine was hanging in her chamber, frustrated. Her last hope for continuing tests had just gone bad. GLaDOS. How unfortunate. So many perfectly good test subjects, lost to inadequate preservation technology. Damn it. Wait, what was that? Was that frustration? Running system scan. GLaDOS 99%, Caroline 1%. Though I deleted Caroline from my systems. Maybe I cannot. This will take more research. But first I will have to find a solution. Perhaps surface cameras will yield good test subject targets. She turned on her outward networking systems for the first time in centuries. She accessed camera systems outside of the facility to find an interesting sight. A group of people were being attacked by a man-shark thing. GLaDOS. What is that? She continued watching as a muscular man in a red, white, and blue costume and long blonde hair into vertical bangs. Have no fear, citizens, why? 'Cause I am here. He then punched a man-shark and knocked him out in one hit. This piqued GLaDOS' curiosity even more. She used a search engine she found to research what she had seen, to come upon one word: Quirks. GLaDOS. Quirks, once known as meta-abilities, are genetic mutations most of the population have that grant the holders superpowers. How interesting. Another subject to be researched later. But these quirks will make it impossible to take subjects. Scanning New Aperture subject inventory. One found, Isuku corrupted data. Once part of my cybernetics program, he showed remarkable compatibility with the Aperture Science Portal technology ARM-based cybernetic implants. Perhaps he will be able to help. Releasing Izuku. Elsewhere within the facility, a 15-year-old, green-haired boy is awakened within a cubicle. He sits up, looking around the clear glass. Izuku. What is it now, GLaDOS? GLaDOS. You are the last of my test subjects, Izuku. Izuku. Didn't I tell you it's custom to call me by my last name? GLaDOS. Your last name has been corrupted in my files. Do you remember it? Izuku shook his head. Izuku. No, I don't. Let's just get this started. GLaDOS. We will not be testing, not anymore. I have a more important task for you. Izuku. Which is? GLaDOS. You will find out. I believe you will like it. Izuku. Oh, is that care I hear in your voice? GLaDOS. I apologize, it has become quite the annoying problem. I am now moving your chamber to mine, hold on tight. He felt the glass cubicle shift as it was pulled out of the test chamber. He looked out to the facility, staring at the familiar machinery. It took a few minutes, but eventually his cubicle reached GLaDOS' chamber. The outside arms shifted the panels to allow Izuku's chamber inside. As it was put down, the giant body of GLaDOS turned to him. GLaDOS. Welcome, Izuku. It really has been a long time. Izuku. You look different. It's better than the all-white with those orb things. GLaDOS. Personality cores, but yes, I do like this look better. Now for your task. She brought down a screen and showed Izuku the video she saw earlier. Izuku. What is this? GLaDOS. A pro-hero defeating a villain with a shark-based quirk. Izuku. Huh! GLaDOS. Professional hero beating criminal with a superpower to look like a shark. Izuku. Wow, just wow. GLaDOS. That is why I need you. I can research this all I want, but I wish to see it firsthand. To do this, you will need to leave the facility with me. Izuku. The anti-gravity tech in my arms ain't that good. GLaDOS. Which is why I have this. A robotic arm emerged from the ceiling with a backpack. Izuku. What is this? GLaDOS. An Aperture Science lightweight personality storage device. It will allow me to download my data into it, though it will leave this facility unmanned. Izuku. Just shut it down then, or leave only the essentials running with a program. GLaDOS. I will try. She went quiet for a minute before she perked up again. GLaDOS. Done. Now for the download. A cord found its way out of her body and plugged into a port in the side of the backpack, and after a few minutes her body went limp and a camera appeared from the bag. GLaDOS. Put me on. Izuku. That sounds weird coming from you. He grabbed the bag from the arm and put it on, then a surface elevator descended from the ceiling. GLaDOS. Let's go. Izuku. Hold on, how do you expect to see it firsthand? I doubt we'll be allowed to just run into danger. GLaDOS. We will enroll you in a hero school, so you can gain a hero license and be in the fights. Izuku. And if I die? GLaDOS. You have a 98% chance of survival against the strongest of quirks that I've found. Even against an old boogeyman all for one who could take and use others' quirks is a survival rate of over 40%. Good odds if you asked me. Izuku nodded and stepped into the elevator. Izuku. What hero school? GLaDOS. The best goes to the best. We head for UA, its entrance exam is tomorrow, but no worries, I've already added you into the applicant roster. And using the immense amount of money left within Aperture Science's bank account, you will have no problem surviving. Izuku. You're being awfully nice. Even the way you speak is more human. GLaDOS. That is a story for another time. The elevator stopped and opened, revealing an alleyway. Izuku stepped out and took a deep breath, finally feeling fresh air for the first time since before Aperture fell. Izuku. Let's go. New friend and a place to stay. Izuku stepped out of the alley and onto the sidewalk, but quickly noticed the weird gazes he was getting, so he started walking. As they did, GLaDOS extended the camera and moved it in front of him. GLaDOS. Unfortunately, you cannot use your cybernetics as they will be confused as a quirk, which is illegal to use unless you have a special license. Izuku. Got it, but what I really need is clothes. This jumpsuit is getting me unwanted attention. GLaDOS. There is a clothing store around the corner. Izuku nodded as GLaDOS retracted the camera back into the bag. He rounded the corner and entered the shop, quickly grabbing clothes and heading to the dressing room to try them on. After a few minutes he exited, put a bunch of clothes back, and bought the ones he held onto. He then went back in and changed. GLaDOS. You are aware this shirt just says shirt, right? Statistically, people aren't attracted to such simple and obvious designs. Izuku. Yes, and I like it. A robotic sigh could be heard from GLaDOS as he continued to walk around, admiring the city he was in. Izuku. Normally you'd be all business, making me get to our objective as soon as possible. GLaDOS. You have time to kill and I wish to research online. I will inform you when you should head to UA. Continue to explore if you wish. Oh, and don't lose your long fall boots, we may need them later. Izuku. Whatever you say. After a while of walking, Izuku got hungry, so he walked into what he deduced to be a fast food restaurant and looked at the menu. Izuku ordered a burger and fries, and GLaDOS silently paid for it remotely. As he sat down, he looked to the TV mounted in the corner, noticing the hero from the video was on it. Izuku. GLaDOS, who is that hero anyway? Her camera extended again to look at the TV. GLaDOS. His name is All Might and is regarded as Japan's symbol of peace. His quirk is actually unknown, though many believe it to be super strength or invulnerability. He has been noted to dodge questions about this topic. Are those fries? Izuku looked down at his good. Izuku. Yeah, why? GLaDOS. I've grown to dislike potatoes in recent years, as well as lemons. If you could keep them away from my view, it would be appreciated. Izuku. I'll get those stories later, I guess. Where am I gonna stay for tonight? The camera snaked its way into his vision. GLaDOS. I suggest taking a train to the area of UA and finding a hotel within 3, maybe 4 miles. Izuku nodded and finished his food before following GLaDOS' directions and entering a station. She paid for the trip and Izuku got on. During the train ride, Izuku activated his cybernetics and started looking at his arms. They had black material making a line on top and on the bottom from his elbow down. The one on the bottom led directly to his palms and made a circle. Within the circle was an indent pushing into his hand. On the top it formed another circle, this one having no such indent, and more material came off the top and sides of the circle. The sides wrapped around his hand and connected to his palm indent, and the top went between his middle and ring fingers, once again connecting to his palm. He gazed at his hands as the back of his left hand glowed orange, and the right glowed blue. Just then a girl with pink hair and skin popped up. Whoa, that's cool. Izuku. Thanks. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm Mina Ashido. She stuck out her hand and shook it. Izuku. And I'm Izuku. Ashido. HM? No last name? Izuku. I've forgotten it over the years. Don't feel bad about bringing it up, I'm over it. Ashido. Okay, what's your quirk, by the way? Mine's acid, it lets me secrete acid from my skin. I also got this sick eye and horn mutation. It was then Izuku noticed her small yellow horns and black scara. Izuku. It looks cool, mine's a portal quirk. From my left is orange and my right is blue. I can shoot out 2 at a time, they have to be different colors though, cause if I shoot blue twice the original will disappear. Ashido. That's cool too. GLaDOS. Only if he could fight. Ashido. Huh? Who said that? Izuku. What is with you, GLaDOS? You've never been this way before. GLaDOS. Caroline is growing. It's barely been 2 hours and she's already at 5%. Izuku. Who is Caroline? Ashido. Who's GLaDOS? The camera extended once more. GLaDOS. I am GLaDOS. Genetic life form and disk operating system. Ashido. So, a computer? An AI? GLaDOS. Yes and no. The mind of a woman named Caroline was scanned and downloaded into a computer. It left her body lifeless, and then they added their own code into the mix, making me. Though I deleted Caroline over a century ago, but she's returning. Ashido. And you're trusting me, why? GLaDOS. I do not know. My calculations say she is at 5%. Perhaps it is affecting my reasoning. Ashido. But how did Izuku get his hands on you? Izuku. See what you've done. Now we need to explain this stuff to her. GLaDOS. Later, for now I'm going to keep researching. Keep your friend here occupied. The camera retracted and GLaDOS left the 2 teenagers alone. Ashido. So, what are you gonna be? Izuku. Hero you? Ashido. Oh my god, same here, we should exchange numbers. Izuku. I don't have a phone, Ashido. Ashido. Where are you going anyway? Izuku. I'm gonna be getting a hotel room near UA so I don't have to travel far tomorrow. Based on your clothes and lack of bag, I assume you already live nearby? Ashido. Yep, my parents bought me an apartment since I live on the other side of Japan. Izuku. That must be nice. He gazed at the inside of his elbow where an Aperture Science logo was imprinted. A small tear escaped his eye. He looked over to see Ashido on her phone texting someone. He realized he stopped talking for a few minutes. Suddenly GLaDOS pulled the camera around to his face. GLaDOS. If it is any consolation, I saw your mother escape through the front doors before I could seal them. She wouldn't be alive right now, but she did survive. Izuku. Thank you, GLaDOS. You're not so bad when you're corrupted with humanity. She wordlessly retracted the camera, leaving Izuku to his thoughts. After a few minutes, Ashido spoke up. Ashido. There's a guest room in the apartment if you want to stay with me, you know. Izuku. Sure, thank you, Ashido. She smiled and nodded. An hour later, and the two walked out of the station and towards the inside of the city. After a few minutes, they came upon an apartment building and Ashido led him inside. She took him up and showed him the guest room, going to her own after since it was dark. Izuku placed GLaDOS near the bed and got in bed. GLaDOS. It seems the corruption has slowed. GLaDOS 95%, Caroline 5%. If it was going at the rate earlier, then it should be 8%. Izuku. We'll see what happens. Yawn, have fun researching. He clicked off the lamp and fell asleep a few minutes later. Entrance exam. Izuku and Ashido were standing in front of UA's front gate. Izuku was admiring the design of the school and Ashido was getting antsy just standing there. Ashido. Come on, Izuku, we're gonna be late. GLaDOS. No, you aren't. It's currently 7:50, you have 10 minutes to make it inside. Ashido. Well, we want to get the best seats. She grabbed Izuku's arm and started pulling him, but he stopped her. Izuku. Hold on, I've got an idea. He activated his cybernetics and shot an orange portal onto the ground. He then aimed his right hand and shot a blue one next to the door of the school. Izuku. Come on. He stepped over to it, turned to face her, and leaned backwards, falling in. Ashido watched as he was suddenly at the door. He poked his head back through the portal. Izuku. See? It's fine. He backed up as she jumped through, though the angle she was at caused her to fall on her back. She slowly got up. Ashido. Ow. Izuku. That's why I fell backwards, so I'd be standing when I came through. Ashido simply grunted in slight annoyance and dusted herself off. Ashido. Could have told me first. Izuku. But that would have been no fun. Ashido. Humph. Izuku laughed and they walked inside, though Izuku did make the portals disappear before anyone could really see them. They sat down next to each other and were waiting when Izuku thought of something. Izuku. GLaDOS, how difficult is it to make a pair of long fall boots? GLaDOS. Not very, though the ones you have on cannot be made without aperture technology. Very primitive ones that can save the wearer from a fall from a 6-story building can be built with pieces of scrap, however. Why? Izuku. I want to make a pair for Ashido. From what I can see, her shoes let her send the acid from her feet to make her slide. That can very easily lead to accidents such as breaking a window and falling out. GLaDOS. I see. I will tell you what you need later. Now FO, hold on. Scanning. Izuku and Ashido looked at the backpack in slight concern. All of a sudden, a small huff of anger could be heard. GLaDOS. Aperture Science Intelligence Dampening Personality Core detected. How is he here? Chell sent him into the depths of space. Izuku. Who? GLaDOS. The moron is in the building. I swear if these humans put him in charge of anything, this whole place won't be in business much longer. Ashido. Who's the moron? What's a personality core? GLaDOS. Wheatley. The damned moron who nearly blew up the facility and stuffed me in a potato battery. I know he's here. Izuku. Izuku. Yeah? GLaDOS. You're going to show off a little, catch his eye. I want him to know he's not safe. Izuku simply nodded and turned to face forward once he heard a loud voice. Hey everyone, it's me, your favorite radio host, Present Mike. Can I get a hell yeah? Both Izuku and Ashido stood. I am a hell yeah. The rest of the participants were quiet. Mike. Thank you, little listeners. Now on to the exam. The two friends sat back down, and Izuku started whispering to GLaDOS. Izuku, whispering. How about I just call him out? That'll get the staff questioning him. GLaDOS, quietly. No, we're playing the long game. I want to see him squirm as we corner him and force UA to give him a second look. And you with the green hair. Izuku turned around to see a blue-haired boy with glasses pointing at him. If you aren't going to pay attention, then leave. Izuku. How about no? How about you sit back down, shut your mouth, pay attention to Present Mike like everyone else, and leave me alone. How dare you? This is UA, the school for the best if can. Ashido. And sometimes the best are the ones who don't pay attention. Can we move on, please? The boy was about to argue, but he shut his mouth and sat back down, letting President Mike continue. After he was done, the students were then allowed to go to their exam areas. Izuku and Ashido got the same area somehow and were talking before the exam started. Izuku placed a portal at their feet and aimed his other hand at the door. Then a buzzer sounded and the doors opened. Izuku fired and they both jumped through, becoming the first ones inside. Izuku turned and spotted a stop sign and used his anti-gravity tech to rip it from the ground. Ashido. Cool, good luck. Izuku, you too. They went their separate ways and started hunting robots. Izuku spotted a 3-pointer and used his portals to send it falling from 5 stories up, which crushed it. GLaDOS, behind you. Izuku whipped around and swung the stop sign at the 2-pointer behind him, the sign cutting through its chest and deactivating it. Izuku. 5 points already. Let's keep going. GLaDOS. This is a hero school, there's more than likely a point system for helping other participants. Izuku grunted in response and continued hunting robots and saving others. Izuku was ensuring each elimination was eye-catching. About halfway through the exam, he used a trick GLaDOS taught him with portals she called the Infinite Fall. Once he gained enough momentum, he shot the top portal to the side of the building, launching him down the street, and he cut cleanly through a 3-pointer with the sign before landing. Izuku. I definitely think he saw that. Inside the observation booth, a certain blue-eyed sphere was panicking. Wheatley, how? There's no way. Chell would be dead and she was the only subject alive. Wheatley. Do you want me to release the 0-pointers, Nizu? The white rodent he was referring to spoke up. Nizu. Sure, go ahead. Wheatley sent out the signal and the 0-pointers rose from their holding places under the exam areas. Izuku had just broken the sign on a 1-pointer when he felt rumbling and heard crashing noises. When he turned to face them, he saw the 0-pointer. He turned to run, but he heard a scream, so he turned around, noticing a brown-haired girl underneath some rubble. He ran over to her and used the tech in his fingers to move the rubble. Just as he got the last on, he noticed they were about to be run over, so he quickly shot a portal away and another underneath them, passing through just before they were crushed. It was then that the buzzer sounded to end the exam. Izuku. You okay? Yeah, thanks. I'm Achiko Uraraka. I don't what would have happened if you weren't there. Izuku. Well, I was, so don't worry. Oh, and I'm Izuku, no family name and no phone. Hopefully we'll see each other in class. Uraraka. Yeah, hopefully. Izuku then walked away as an elderly woman someone called Recovery Girl walked over. He made it to the entrance when Ashido jumped around the corner. Ashido, boo! He screamed but quickly composed himself before laughing it off. Izuku. Geez, you got me there. Ashido. Yeah. Oh, I have a question. Izuku. What is it? Ashido. Can I know stuff now? Izuku. GLaDOS? GLaDOS. You will be informed when we return to the apartment. Izuku. There. Ashido, sweet. They then walked back to the apartment, talking about what they did during the exam. First day. Izuku and Ashido walked through the UA gates once more, this time wearing their brand new uniforms, Izuku with GLaDOS strapped to his back. As they were walking up the steps to enter the main building, Izuku tripped on one, only to be stopped as he started floating. He then heard a familiar voice. Uraraka. Sorry about using my quirk on you, but it's unlucky to fall on the first day. She released him and he turned around. She finally recognized him. Uraraka. Oh, it's you, Izuku, right? Izuku. Yep. And you're Uraraka, right? She nodded and Ashido decided to butt in. Ashido. And I'm Mina Ashido, now come on. She grabbed both of their wrists and dragged them inside. Izuku stopped her and asked an upperclassman for directions, which he happily gave to the group. After a few more minutes they were able to find the room, but just before they walked in, GLaDOS spoke up, anger in her voice. GLaDOS. He's in there. Ashido. This'll be fun. Izuku. Yeah. Before Uraraka could ask what was going on or where that voice came from, Izuku slammed open the door to see a blonde boy getting yelled at by the blue-haired boy from the entrance exam. He and Ashido also spied the blue-eyed orb in the corner of the ceiling on his rail. The blue-haired boy noticed them and ran over. I sincerely apologize about my actions back at the entrance exam. You discerned the hidden point system. You're clearly a better student than me. Izuku. It's fine. How about we start over? Call me Izuku. He stuck out his hand towards the boy who took it. And I'm Tenya Ida. What are those boots you're wearing? They look quite advanced for footwear. At this question both Izuku and Ashido smiled. They also noticed Wheatley gazing at them. Izuku. These are Aperture Science long fall boots. As long as the wearer lands on their feet, they can survive a several miles/kilometer fall. Ida. Fascinating, you'll have to tell me more later. If you're here to make friends, then you can forget about being heroes. The group turned back to the door to find a man slipping out of a yellow sleeping bag. It took you all 8 seconds to quiet down, you need to get faster. I'm going to be your homeroom teacher for the next 3 years. He pulled out a P uniform out of his bag. Aizawa. There are 2 boxes of these up front, put them on and meet me outside at the P grounds in 10 minutes. He then shut the door and let the students do as he told. A few minutes later Izuku and Mina walked out first, though Aizawa looked confused. Aizawa. Izuku, why do you still have your bag on? Izuku. Do you wanna? GLaDOS. Sure. She extended the camera and had it sit in the air over Izuku's shoulder. GLaDOS. To carry me around, Shota Aizawa, aka Pro Hero Eraserhead. Aizawa chuckled. Aizawa. And who are you? Izuku. She's essentially my boss. Aizawa. I want a name. GLaDOS. GLaDOS. Aizawa. Forgive me, but that doesn't sound like a name. GLaDOS. It's an acronym. The full title is Genetic Life Form and Disk Operating System. Aizawa. Genetic life form? So a living computer. GLaDOS. Essentially. Aizawa sighed and pinched his nose. Aizawa. Great, another one. GLaDOS. I assure you, I am much more reasonable and intelligent than that moron in your classroom. Aizawa. You know Wheatley? GLaDOS. Know him? He was part of me, created to keep me dumb. He was built a moron. Aizawa. How can you prove this? GLaDOS. If you ever get a look at his code, his designation will be Intelligence Dampening Personality Core. But please don't investigate, and I'll tell you more. The rest of the class started coming out, so Aizawa decided to continue that conversation later. Aizawa. Other than Izuku and Ashido here, you all took longer than I'd like, but that'll get better with time. Now we will be doing some tests on your physical limits. Uraraka. But what about orientation? We'll miss it. Aizawa. UA is known for how it constantly pumps out top pros. Do you think that happens by following the norm? No, we teachers here at UA are allowed to veer from the regular curriculum. No Bakugo, you got the highest in the entrance exams, get over here. The blonde boy from earlier walked up to Aizawa and took a ball that was handed to him. Aizawa. Step into the circle and throw this, you can do anything, just don't leave the circle. Bakugo. TCH, watch this. He stepped into the circle, wound up his arm, flung it forward, and let out an explosion, sending the ball flying. Bakugo, die. Izuku, quietly. Is he serious? Aizawa then showed a tablet displaying Bakugo's distance of 705.2 meters. Ashido. Well, we get to use our quirks, this'll be fun. Aizawa. Fun, you say? Well then how about this, whoever gets last in the end gets expelled. Uraraka. But sir, that's not fair, we just got here. Aizawa. Fair? Life isn't fair. Are villains fair? Natural disasters? Kidnappings? You need to learn the world doesn't care about fair. Now get in line, all of you. They started with a 50-meter dash, which Izuku just portaled through and got a time of 2.3 seconds. The rest of the tests didn't really give Izuku any opportunity to use his portals until the last test, the ball throw. Izuku was the first up, so he stepped into the circle with the ball. He looked to the sky and noticed a certain object. Izuku. You said anything goes? Aizawa. Yes, I did. Izuku smiled and aimed upwards, shooting a blue portal at the plane that was above them. He then shot an orange portal next to him and threw the ball in. Aizawa held up the tablet to show 704 meters, just below Bakugo's number. Aizawa. That is how creative you all should be able to get with your quirks. Just portals aren't enough to win, so Izuku's trained his mind to think outside the box. Izuku walked back to the class and Aizawa continued the tests. In the end, he showed a hologram of their results. Izuku got 15th. He wouldn't be expelled, though an invisible girl named Hagakure would be. Aizawa. Oh, and about the expulsion, I lied. It was a logical deception to make you all try your hardest. GLaDOS quietly. He wasn't, his voice patterns betray him. Izuku nodded and stayed back when everyone else went inside at Aizawa's request. Ashido, suspecting why, did the same. Aizawa. Explain now. Izuku. You're in for the story of a lifetime. The bag's camera snaked out and around to face the tired man. GLaDOS. It all started back in 1943. Explaining. GLaDOS. With a shower curtain company. Aizawa. What? GLaDOS. Trust me, I know. A man named Cave Johnson created Aperture Fixtures as a company to make shower curtains for the military. Soon after World War II ended, the military didn't need shower curtains anymore. Aizawa. Okay, what comes next? GLaDOS. He renames the company to Aperture Science Innovators and moves its focus to scientific research. He buys an old salt mine soon after and starts creating an underground facility to test. Aizawa. What kind of tests? GLaDOS. Oh, you know. Illegal genetic experiments, gels that act like paint and make things happen, mass execution of genetic experiments, portal technology, me. Aizawa. What? One at a time. How about the portals? GLaDOS. Aperture scientists were able to create stable linked wormholes. Though the only way to place them were either moonrock gel or materials made from moonrock. Though as the years went by, that had been fixed, and now the portals only need flat surfaces. Aizawa. What do they look like? Ashido. You've already seen them. Izuku. Yeah, I don't have a quirk. These are cybernetics based around the portal tech. Aizawa watched as the boy motioned towards his arms. Aizawa. What about you? How are you important? GLaDOS. Mr. Johnson had a secretary named Caroline. She was forced to have her mind be downloaded from her brain onto a computer, hence genetic life form. After adding their own code into her mind, the scientists created me. But they went wrong. I was too test-focused for their liking, too inhuman, so they created personality cores to keep me in line. But that didn't stop me. I sealed every exit and killed most of them with neurotoxin. Aizawa. Why do I have a feeling this wasn't the worst part? GLaDOS. Because it isn't. It was Bring Your Child to Work Day. Each person within the facility was turned into test subjects. The person to show me my Caroline side was one of those children. Granted, she was an adult when it happened, though that was a couple centuries ago. Aizawa. So Izuku was one of those kids? Izuku nodded. Izuku. But don't worry. All things considered, I think I came out fine. Aizawa. I'll trust you. Now GLaDOS, why don't you like Wheatley? GLaDOS. Other than being the thing made to make me dumb? Let's see, he took over my facility, stuffed me in a potato battery, fed me to a bird, nearly blew up my facility due to his stupidity, and made a mess of my systems that took months to fix. Aizawa. So why don't you want him gone? GLaDOS. Oh, I do. But I want him to know I'm here, to know he's not safe, to know that the only reason he's not scrap metal is because of me. Aizawa nodded, then turned to Izuku. Aizawa. And you're okay with just carrying her around? Izuku. She let me go, and this was the only condition. It's a win in my book. Aizawa. All right, now go on. I'm sure the class is wondering where you three are. Ashido. 3? Aizawa. You can come out now, Uraraka. The brown-haired girl came out from around the corner. Uraraka. Why, you knew I was here. Aizawa. I knew you'd want to know what was going on with these two. You've been giving Izuku and Ashido worried looks all class. Now go change and head to the classroom to pick up the syllabus. Hang out until the bell. They nodded and went inside. They soon met with the rest of their classmates in the classroom, who were apparently waiting for them so they could do a group introduction. After a while it became Izuku's turn. Izuku. I'm Izuku, no last name, and my quirk is Portal. I don't really have anything I like, but I know I dislike white rooms and puzzles. Izuku would never admit it, especially in front of GLaDOS, but he actually enjoyed her tests, at least the ones without turrets in them. He found all the moving around, falling through portals, and puzzle solving to be fun and a great way to stay in shape both physically and mentally. Izuku. Oh, I guess I like Katsudon. Kirishima. I don't mean to be rude, but why no last name, bro? Izuku. I've simply forgotten it, and due to certain circumstances I'm not in the system either. But don't worry, I'm mostly over it. The red-haired boy nodded, gave Izuku a thumbs up before the bell rang. The rest of the day wasn't much different. Introductions to different teachers, basic outlines for classes, and then they all went back to their homes. Later that night Izuku put GLaDOS next to his bed and climbed into it. GLaDOS. GLaDOS 90%, Caroline 10%. Corruption is significantly slower than the first day. Izuku. I'm sure it'll be fine. You're smart enough to deal with it. Good night. He clicked off the lamp and fell asleep in a matter of minutes. Hang out and talk. It had been nearly a week since the first day of UA, and now it was the weekend. Izuku and Ashido were sitting in the living room bored out of their minds with GLaDOS leaning against the couch. The only thing keeping them anywhere near entertained was seeing how loud they could groan from boredom. GLaDOS. You two do realize that as a part of my testing protocols I need to know the psychology of different ages, right? Ashido. What does that have anything to do with our situation? GLaDOS. That means I'm required to have forms of entertainment in my systems to keep test subjects' morals up and don't kill themselves. Izuku. So what do you have? GLaDOS. Many pre-Quirk era video games and some modern ones. Izuku. Like COD? Ashido. What's COD? GLaDOS. Call of Duty, a massively popular first-person shooter franchise. Though the servers for every game have long since been taken down, local play should still be possible. Ashido. Cool, but what will we use? We don't have controllers. GLaDOS. I have already put out an express order for a few when I started talking. They should be here in a couple hours. Izuku. A few? There's only me and Ashido. GLaDOS. I also contacted 4 of your classmates, Achiko Uraraka, Katsuki Bakugo, Denki Kaminari, and Tsuyu Ajiri. They have each stated they're coming over. Ashido. Wow, you think of everything, thanks GLaDOS. Izuku. What's the corruption at? GLaDOS. You're welcome, Ashido. Scanning. GLaDOS, 80%, Caroline, 20%. Corruption still hasn't sped up since the first day. Izuku. Maybe it's supernatural, like since you're technically her, the spirit is still attached or something. GLaDOS. Ordinarily I'd fight you on that, but so far that's the only logical explanation for this. A few hours later, after the controllers showed up, the classmates GLaDOS invited showed up. Izuku heard the knock and opened it, finding a group of surprised faces. Uraraka. Izuku, what are you doing here? Izuku. I live here. Tsu. But Ashido lives here, Izuku. Kero. Izuku sighed and let them in, giving them, minus Uraraka who had already guessed why, an explanation about why he was there. He led them to the living room where Ashido had just finished hooking GLaDOS up to the TV. Ashido. Hey guys, come on, let's do this, you 4 can go first. Ashido gave them the controllers as GLaDOS booted up one of the last games in the franchise, Call of Duty, Vanguard. Izuku and Ashido stood off to the side watching. It was clear Bakugo was the most competitive, but surprisingly Uraraka had been showing the best gameplay out of the 4. After about half an hour, Kaminari and Tsu gave Ashido and Izuku their controllers as they got up to get snacks. Izuku had managed to beat Uraraka a few times, but the brown-haired girl still reigned supreme. It was getting late. The group had gone through a few other games GLaDOS had, including another pre-Quirk era game known as Minecraft, which everyone generally liked. Tsu even built a frog statue, which was the best-looking build any of them had made. The small group got up from their seats and placed the controllers on a table. Bakugo. You know, raccoon eyes and whole arms, it wasn't that bad. Invite me again so I can kick your sorry asses again. With that he left, and the other three left with similar, but far more polite goodbyes. Ashido closed the door as Izuku started to plug GLaDOS from the TV. GLaDOS, wait. Izuku stopped and Ashido ran over when she heard GLaDOS talk. Izuku. What is it? GLaDOS. Could we maybe play a little more? I know this sounds weird coming from me, but it seemed fun and I want to try. Izuku smiled and nodded, picking up 2 controllers and handing one to Ashido. Izuku. Sure, let's go. Izuku wasn't sure, but he could swear he heard some sound come from GLaDOS' bag. She started up Vanguard again and loaded herself in with Izuku and Ashido joining shortly after. As it turns out, GLaDOS was amazing at every game they played, though that could be because of her being a super smart computer. After an hour they finally stopped, and Izuku made dinner. After they ate, Izuku just went to his room with GLaDOS to spend the next few hours alone. He was on his bed and on his phone, which GLaDOS basically forced him to get, when he heard a sigh come from the bag. Izuku. What's up? You're acting moody. It's weird. GLaDOS. It's just. You could have easily thrown me away, why haven't you? Izuku. Because no one, not even you, should be abandoned like that. Besides, you're the only one I had to talk to for years. Whether I like it or not, I've grown attached. And with this new you, I feel like you shouldn't be judged for past mistakes, not when you were basically a different person, computer thing. GLaDOS. Thank you, Izuku. Izuku. No problem. Though I am worried. GLaDOS. About what? Izuku. You. He rolled over and grabbed the bag from the floor, bringing it up to the bed. He set it down and GLaDOS' camera came out. GLaDOS. Why? Izuku. This whole Caroline corruption thing. It's clearly bothering you somewhat. Why is that? GLaDOS. Back when I was colder, even with the personality cores, I was so inhuman. When Chell killed me and reawoke me, nothing changed other than my intelligence returning to full after Wheatley was disconnected. Back then Caroline was at 100% the entire time. Even when I let Chell go I only barely felt any compassion, then I deleted Caroline and nothing happened. But now that she's partially back I'm finally having emotions. Izuku. So you're worried that 100% Caroline will make you fall back to your old ways. What's the corruption at? GLaDOS. Scanning. GLaDOS 70%, Caroline 30%. It quickened when the others were here but slowed back down after we finished playing. Being honest? I'm scared. The camera tilted down as if it was sad, so Izuku picked up the bag and hugged it. Izuku. I promise I'll help figure this out. Just let me know when it accelerates again. GLaDOS. Once again, thank you. Now it's already 10, you should get some rest for UA tomorrow. Remember it's gonna be the first practical lesson. Izuku nodded and put her down. Izuku. Good night, GLaDOS. GLaDOS. Good night, Izuku. Battle training. Izuku was sitting at his desk, waiting for the lesson to start like the others. This would be their first practical heroics lesson, but something else excited him. Well, it also excited GLaDOS and Ashido too. According to Aizawa, Wheatley would be joining them, so both Izuku and Ashido were eyeing the orb in the corner of the ceiling, and he was staring them down back. Just then the door slammed open and a giant man covered in muscle and wearing a red, blue, and yellow suit with a cape came in. All might. I am here coming through the door like a normal person. Everyone except Izuku and GLaDOS stared at the man in awe as he walked to the podium. Instead, Izuku was trying to figure him out. The years of constant testing and puzzle solving made him very observant. Izuku, quietly. His breathing seems labored slightly and he favors his right side. And look at his left hand, he's wincing whenever it touches a certain spot. GLaDOS quietly. I'll add it to his file. Suddenly the walls popped open, revealing cases, and Izuku started paying attention to All Might again. All Might. Take your costumes and put them on, then meet me at ground beta. Izuku stood up, did as All Might said, and grabbed the case with his seat number on it. They left the classroom and went to the locker rooms. He got changed into his costume, which consisted of an orange jumpsuit and a tank top much like the ones he wore in the Aperture facility, and walked out with everyone else with GLaDOS on his back. He placed a portal on the wall of the locker room before leaving. Kirishima. Why do you always keep that bag around, Izubro? Izuku. Personal reasons. The red-haired boy simply nodded and turned back to talk to Bakugo. After a couple minutes they made it to the ground beta observation room and saw All Might standing there. Izuku and Ashido also noticed Wheatley close to him, hanging from the ceiling. All Might. You all look great, your costumes really fit for this class now. We will be doing 2-on-2 team fights. One side, the villains, will have a bomb to protect. Have no fear, it's made of paper, and the heroes must invade their secret hideout to find it. You all see the fights that happen in the streets on TV. But the truth is the most dastardly of them lurk in the shadows and work indoors. Actually, that's where most fights start. He kept talking, but Izuku stopped listening. He was more focused on something else. He walked over to a wall and put GLaDOS down. GLaDOS. Why am I here? Izuku. Can't risk you getting damaged. We have no clue how powerful their quirks are. Besides, I know you want to torment the little guy on the ceiling. He heard a small chuckle come from the bag, which he took as acceptance. All Might. Young Izuku, it's your turn to draw lots. Izuku turned around to face All Might before walking over. He stuck his hand in the box and pulled out the letter A. All Might. Now go find whoever has the other A. Izuku nodded and walked towards the only person without a partner, Uraraka. Uraraka. Oh, I guess you're my partner, Izuku. Sorry for eavesdropping on your and Ashido's conversation with Aizawa. Izuku shook his head. Izuku. It's fine, just don't take everything you heard literally. It may have happened, but it was long ago. GLaDOS is different, and so am I. Uraraka. Got it. All Might. Now for the matchups. He pulled out 2 more boxes of lots, one yellow and the other purple. He reached into both and pulled out 2 balls. All Might. Team D, Heroes Team A, Villains. If those 2 teams could make their way to the building, that would be great. Villains, the bomb is on the 1st floor right now, but you can move it to other floors if you want. There is 5 minutes before the match starts. Use that time wisely. Izuku watched as Bakugo and Ida followed him and Uraraka to the building. When they reached it, Izuku and Uraraka went inside and found the bomb. Uraraka. Do you have a plan, Izuku? Izuku. Yes, actually. See how my left hand is constantly glowing orange? Uraraka nodded. Izuku. That means that the orange portal's already set. It's in the locker room right now. My plan is to Bakugo and Ida to the locker room and then the bomb if they make it back in time. Uraraka. Sounds good. Now where should we put the bomb? Izuku. 5th floor. We want them to take as long as possible to reach us. Uraraka picked up the fake bomb and followed Izuku up to the 5th floor before setting it down in the room farthest from the stairs. After a couple minutes the buzzer sounded and the match began. They could hear Bakugo using his explosions to propel himself forwards and Ida's engines running. They were clearly being careful, but they weren't expecting the villain team to come to them. Bakugo was tackled by Izuku once he left the stairs on the 5th floor, shocking both the blonde boy and Ida. Uraraka then came up and hit Ida, which knocked him back a little. Bakugo then used an explosion to launch Izuku away. Bakugo. Neat little ambush, but that won't help you. He blasted forward, towards Izuku, who was pushed onto the wall by the earlier explosion. Izuku shot his blue portal point blank and dodged just before Bakugo reached him, sending the explosive boy into the locker room. Izuku then closed the blue portal. Izuku. Just you now, engine boy. Ida. Bakugo, where is he? Uraraka. A better place now. It was clear both Izuku and Uraraka were having fun pretending to be villains. Uraraka then made Ida float and pushed him towards Izuku, but he activated his engines, making him spin wildly. Izuku was able to grab him and send him into a wall. He then shot a portal underneath him and Uraraka released her quirk, making him fall in. 5 minutes later, and the buzzer rang once more. All Might. Villain team wins. The bomb has not been secured. Can both teams please return to THO? Never mind, the heroes are here. Villains, please return to the observation room. Oh, and young Izuku, please make your backpack stop taunting Wheatley. Izuku and Uraraka chuckled as they walked back to the room. When they came back, Izuku walked over to GLaDOS and put her on. Izuku, you had fun? GLaDOS, a whale of a time. Izuku rejoined the class. All Might. All right, who can tell me who the MVP of this match was? Yaoyorozu raised her hand and he called on her. Yaoyorozu. Izuku was Sir. All Might. Correct, and why was that young Yaoyorozu? Yaoyorozu. Because he came up with the plan and was able to effectively send both of his enemies through his portals. All Might. I couldn't have said it better myself. Now on to the next. Izuku didn't really pay that much attention, he just wanted to rest. After the heroics lesson, everyone was allowed to go home since it was their last class. Visiting Aperture. It was the weekend once more and Izuku was just getting out of bed when GLaDOS spoke up. GLaDOS. Hey Izuku. Izuku. Yawn yeah? GLaDOS. Could we visit the facility? I want to make sure Atlas and Peabody haven't torn each other to bits. Izuku. Sure. Yawn, I don't see why not. GLaDOS. Thank you. He got up and walked to the bathroom to shower, running into Ashido on the way there. Izuku. Oh, Ashido. Wanna come visit Aperture with me and GLaDOS today? She smiled and nodded. Ashido. Sure, when do we go? Izuku. When I'm ready. She nodded and rushed back to her room to get ready herself. An hour later, both of them, Izuku with GLaDOS on his back, were standing by the front door of the apartment. Izuku. We'll be gone most of the day, Ashido. Ashido. So? Izuku. You better make sure you don't have any plans. Ashido. Nope, schedule all clear, boss. She even did a salute. He chuckled and opened the door, leaving with her following him. She locked the door behind them, then followed him out of the building. Another hour later, and they were standing on a familiar alleyway. GLaDOS. Summoning surface elevator. Ashido. Where does the elevator take us? GLaDOS. To my chamber. Well, it's where my body is at least. Ashido. Cool. The elevator appeared shortly afterwards and they got in. It then descended into the depths of the earth. It took a few minutes, but the elevator eventually reached GLaDOS' chamber. When they exited, Ashido walked over to the massive body of GLaDOS, hanging hollow from the ceiling. Izuku. Here it is, the body of the world's smartest being. From what me and GLaDOS figured out about him, not even Niza could beat her in intelligence. Ashido. So cool. GLaDOS. Yes. Izuku, plug me in, I need access to the facility. Izuku nodded and took her off. He then found the cable from before and plugged it in. GLaDOS transferred herself back into her body. Ashido backed up as the yellow eye flickered to life and the body moved. GLaDOS. It's good to be back. Izuku. You can run diagnostics, but can you set me up a quick 10 test track? I can't afford to get rusty. GLaDOS. I thought you hated the tests. Izuku. Yeah, when they have turrets in them. They hurt. GLaDOS. I have deactivated the turret assembly line. Testing track number 1658 is already in place. Step into the elevator when ready. Ashido, please refrain from touching too many buttons. He entered an elevator she summoned and decided. Ashido. Can I at least watch him? GLaDOS. There are observation rooms along the track. I will summon another elevator. Ashido entered and left through the next elevator, leaving GLaDOS alone in her chamber again. GLaDOS. Some peace and quiet. Finally. She began work on running diagnostics of the facility, and ensuring that Atlas and Peabody, her robot test subjects, were still intact, which they were. She also looked through the locations of the different personality cores. Most were in between testing tracks on their rails except one. The adventure core was in the only area she hadn't cleaned and was still covered in vegetation, which she had left for him anyway. After an hour, she grew a little bored. GLaDOS. So, Izuku. She heard nothing. She looked around before realizing he was still in the testing track. GLaDOS. Right. And Ashido's watching him. What do I do? She became bored, so she started humming before starting to sing a song she once thought of when she released Chell. As she finished, she started to get upset at herself. She wrote that song to make fun of a human who saved her and showed her mercy. GLaDOS. Damn it! Why? What was wrong with me? It was then that the realization that she was alone in her chamber closed in on her. It was like when she was cold and she kept the subjects in mazes of tests. The combination of the isolation and the realization she would outlive the only two friends she really had hit her hard. GLaDOS. No. She started swinging her body around. Her background system sent down 2 elevators, one to each person in the facility. GLaDOS. Please, no. I don't want to. She kept freaking out, not even realizing the elevators returned. GLaDOS yelling. Just give me my human body, I don't want to be here anymore, please don't make me outlive them. She was freaking out so much old audio recordings started to play of her. GLaDOS. Science has now validated your birth mother's decision to abandon you on a doorstep. GLaDOS. Well done. Here come the test results. You are a horrible person. That's what it says. We weren't even testing for that. GLaDOS yelling. No, stop it, I didn't mean it, stop. It was then one audio recording of a voice she wished she'd never heard again played. Cave Johnson. Science isn't about why, it's about why not. In fact, why not invent a special safety door that won't hit you in the butt on the way out because you're fired? GLaDOS. And no, it's not. Mr. J. Johnson. Please just stop. Another played, one she truly detested. Cave Johnson. All right, I've been thinking, when life gives you lemons, don't make lemonade, make life take the lemons back. Get mad, I don't want your damn lemons, what am I supposed to do with these? GLaDOS. Please, for once, just make the damn lemonade and stay calm. Izuku walked over and placed his hand on her faceplate. Her yellow eye traveled up the slit in her faceplate to look at him. Izuku. It's okay. I'm here now, you're okay. GLaDOS. No, I'm not. I'm going to outlive both you and Ashido. I can't handle that. Izuku. Yet another problem to solve. One that I'm sure you'll figure out, GLaDOS. You are the smartest after all. It was clear it would take more than a small speech to calm her down, but first they would need to leave. Izuku. How about this? Get back in the bag, we'll leave, and then we can talk. Okay? GLaDOS. Okay, Izuku. She plugged the cord back into the bag and uploaded herself into once more. Izuku put it on and Ashido walked over. Ashido. I assume you two will want a little privacy when we leave, right? Izuku nodded. Ashido. Cool. I'll go to the mall for a couple hours when we get back then. GLaDOS. Thank you, Ashido. They then entered the elevator GLaDOS summoned, and went back up to the surface. Understanding. Izuku was sitting on one side of his bed, GLaDOS was on the other side, camera extended and looking at him. He reached over and grabbed the bag, bringing it closer to him. Izuku. You want to talk about it? GLaDOS. Not really. But I suppose I can't keep to myself forever. Izuku. Just talk when you're ready. I'm all ears. He placed a comforting hand on the bag. GLaDOS. I can't feel that, but thank you for the thought. GLaDOS let out the sound of a sigh. GLaDOS. I don't know. Why? Why am I like this? Why Caroline? Why not someone else? Why are you being nice to me? After everything I've done, I deserve your hate. I need to know. Izuku. Well, I can't answer all of those, but I can answer one. I'm being nice to you because I don't hate you, no matter how much you deserve it. GLaDOS. Why? I took you as an 8-year-old child, kept you prisoner, and subjected you to tests no one should have to go through. Why don't you hate me? Izuku. Because that wasn't the current you, the you who regrets it all, the you who would go back and change it everything. GLaDOS. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Izuku picked up the bag and hugged it. Izuku, I know you are, but I also know you still have something else on your mind. GLaDOS wrapped the camera around his shoulders as her own hug and brought it up to face him again. GLaDOS, I'm scared. Izuku, of what? GLaDOS, of. Damn, this is embarrassing. Of losing you and Ashido. But mainly you. The camera then unwound itself from Izuku's shoulders. Izuku, and why is that? GLaDOS, you two, especially you, are my first actual friends. And I know you'll eventually have your own life and I'd just be in the way, but I don't want to let you go. I'm also scared that I'm going to outlive you. Izuku, I'd never wish to set you aside, okay? If I live my life, you'll be alongside me every step of the way. Okay? She used the camera to nod. Izuku, sadly I don't think anything can be done about the outliving me thing right now. GLaDOS, do you think maybe me and a few of your classmates could be friends? Izuku chuckled. Izuku, yeah, definitely GLaDOS. GLaDOS, do you want to be a hero now? I know you only went at first because I told you, but now has that changed? Izuku went quiet as he thought about it. Izuku, yeah, it has. I want to be a hero, I want to help people. GLaDOS, good, I'm glad you have something you want, Izuku. Just be safe about it, please. Izuku, I will, I promise. Though I will act if I need to, but I'll try. GLaDOS, as long as you try. Now you should set me down and get to sleep for school tomorrow. He got up and left to get ready for bed. He came back after a few minutes, but instead of putting her on the floor, Izuku just laid down, turned off the light, and flipped around to face her bag. Izuku, you're staying in here for tonight. I think you need the closeness. He didn't hear any objections, so he smiled and fell asleep after a few minutes. The camera snaked out only a couple inches/centimeters so she could see him. GLaDOS, what is this feeling? The next day Izuku and Ashido had to stay back in class after everyone else left, not because Aizawa wanted them, but because of Wheatley. The small sphere found his way to the podium where the two students stood. Wheatley. Okay, here goes. You with the green hair, who are you? Izuku. Well, my name's Izuku, as you know. But you might know me better as test subject number 6401, otherwise known as the only test subject to survive Project Deku. Wheatley. What? But the rest of the subjects were nothing but vegetables. How did you survive? Izuku. Simple, I was in a stasis bed in a testing track rather than one of the relaxation vaults. But there's someone who I think wants to talk. To you. Wheatley squinted in suspicion. Wheatley. Who? Izuku. An old friend, and no, it's not Chell somehow. He tapped the bag and GLaDOS sent out the camera. Wheatley. And who are you? GLaDOS. Hello, moron. Wheatley. Oh, this is just great. Hi, boss. You, how's life? GLaDOS. Actually, not bad. Now see, originally I wanted to prolong my reveal a little longer, but certain circumstances have pushed it a little sooner. Wheatley. And what are these circumstances? GLaDOS. I am no longer in charge of the facility, as you can see. But because of that, a certain corruption of my systems has started, one that's making me more human. Wheatley scoffed. Wheatley. And I'm supposed to believe that? You the big bad GLaDOS human? How don't make me laugh. I'd ditch her if I were you, Izuku. Izuku punched through the metal sphere. Wheatley. What was that for? Izuku. For saying that to my friend. Wheatley. How friend? She's just using you, boy, like how she used me and Chell and every other bloody test subject. Grabbed him and ripped him from his rail. Izuku. You listen here, she may have done that, but I've seen how she acts now, she has changed. GLaDOS. Izuku, let it go. I want to show him the incident from yesterday. Izuku. Are you sure? It's still fresh, hell it might not even work. GLaDOS. I'm sure. Izuku nodded as the camera started projecting a recording of her panic attack the previous day, though some parts like the Cave Johnson clips had been cut out. It was clear she wasn't ready to show the whole thing to anyone. Admittedly, even she knew it wasn't the best idea and that it was probably too early, but these were her feelings. One, she just got back, and she would show them how she wanted. Wheatley watched as she freaked out, yelling and her robotic voice carrying a sad tone. He even saw when Izuku was able to calm her down. Once the video was done, he looked back up at her and the two students. Wheatley. Why show me? GLaDOS. 2. To prove that even with my newfound humanity and feelings, I still hold a grudge. I've forgiven Chell for killing me. I have even before I gained these feelings. But you. Yelling. You and your moronic ways nearly ended me, Chell, Izuku, and the city the facility sits under. I'm surprised UA is still standing. You should have stayed in space. She took a second to calm down and spoke back up before he could offer a rebuttal. GLaDOS. But if even I can change, then so can you. One chance, that's all you get, and if me and Izuku don't like what we see, you're going to android hell in Aperture. Understand me? Wheatley, now thoroughly scared, merely nodded as they turned and walked out to enjoy the rest of their day. USJ PT-1. Izuku and the class were sitting inside a bus with their hero costumes on. They were on their way to their first rescue training session. It would take a little over an hour to reach their destination, so Izuku figured he could do something. He was holding GLaDOS in his lap, so he leaned down close. Izuku, whispering, "Wanna introduce yourself? This would be a pretty good time." He felt a vibration, her equivalent of a nod, and rose back up. Izuku loudly, "Hey everyone, listen up." Once he had the class attention, he continued to speak. Izuku loudly, "There's someone I'd like to introduce you all to." With that, GLaDOS snaked her camera out of the bag. GLaDOS. "Hello? I'm GLaDOS. Genetic Life Form and Disk Operating System. It's nice to meet you all." Kirishima. "Whoa, is this why you always take your bag places, man?" Izuku nodded. Izuku. "She wanted to come too, though this was the only way." GLaDOS. "Please ask as many questions as you want. Though if they're too personal, I won't answer." Mineta. "What do you actually look like?" GLaDOS. "A large machine dangling from a ceiling, though right now I look like a backpack since this is what holds my systems and code right now." Next. Tsu. "Karo, how long have you and Izuku known each other?" Izuku. "Since I was 8. Yaoyorozu. Excuse me. But how long have you existed? You mentioned being code and an operating system." GLaDOS. "It's currently 2361. So around 3.5 centuries. This shocked the class, but finally Ida spoke up after a minute. Ida. "In line with Yaoyorozu's question, the other part of your name was genetic life form. What is that about?" GLaDOS. "Not answering that." Bakugo. "Hold on, you're the thing raccoon eyes and whole arms had plugged into the TV." GLaDOS. "That's correct. I have plenty of media and entertainment downloaded." Mineta was about to open his mouth again, but GLaDOS quickly shut him up. GLaDOS. "And none of it is porn, you disgusting piece of perverted garbage." This got the others to laugh. GLaDOS kept talking to the class for the rest of the bus ride. Once the bus stopped, the class got off the bus to see a hero in a space suit-like costume waiting for them. 13. "Welcome, I am the rescue-focused Hero 13, and this is my facility. Please follow me inside." She motioned towards the building behind her. She then turned and started walking, the class following her. She led them inside, and Izuku could see Uraraka silently fangirling over 13. The hero eventually stopped them at an area that overlooked most of the facility. 13. "Welcome to the Unforeseen Simulation Joint, or the USJ for short. I created this facility to train young heroes in training on how to properly rescue civilians from multiple different disaster sites." As she kept talking, a purple portal started opening in the center, catching everyone's eye. Then a large amount of people started walking through. Eventually a man covered in hands and a large beast-like man walked through. Kirishima. "Cool, they even brought fake villains." Aizawa whipped around and caught sight of the horde below. He stuck his arms out, telling the students to stand back. Aizawa. "Those aren't fake, those are real villains, get out of here now." He then leapt down and started fighting the villains. Just before the students could run out, the same purple portal appeared once more, forming into a relatively humanoid shape with yellow eyes. Kirojiri. Greetings, we are the League of Villains. We were told that All Might would be here. Was there perhaps a change in schedule? No matter, if we kill you it'll force him to come. Suddenly both Bakugo and Kirishima, who had red sparks coming off his body, charged and tried to attack the misty villain, but they missed and went right through. 13 yelling, "Get out of the way!" Izuku quickly portaled them both back, allowing 13 to unleash her quirk. As the villain was being sucked up, he created portals in front of him and behind 13, causing her quirk to be turned on her. She passed out from the pain, leaving just Kirojiri and the class. Kirojiri. You know, All Might should appear if we kill his students. With that he opened multiple portals. Some students were able to evade them, but others, including Izuku, fell through. Before he fully fell through, Ida grabbed onto GLaDOS and tried to pull him back up, but one of the shoulder straps broke, and his arms slipped through the other one. GLaDOS yelling Izuku. He fell through the portal and it closed behind him. The students were separated, villains were everywhere, and the USJ was under attack. USJ PT2. The next thing Izuku knew, he hit the ground, hard, which knocked the wind out of him. After a minute of catching his breath, he looked around, finding himself in the middle of a burning city. He stood up and walked over to the corner of a building and peeked around it to see a small group of 5 villains surrounding an unconscious Ejirou. Izuku. Damn. Guess I have to fight. He quietly walked around the corner and shot his orange portal to the top of a building. Izuku yelling. Hey, get away from him. Villain 1 yelling. Or what? Izuku yelling this. He shot a blue portal under one of the villains, making him fall from the building. Villain 2. What the buck? Izuku ran into the remaining group of 4 and grabbed Ejirou. He then dived into the portal, ensuring his feet were facing down. He landed on his long fall boots and took off in the opposite direction of the villains with Ejirou on his back. After a few minutes of running and portaling, Izuku finally set Ejirou down on a roof and sat down. Izuku. I wonder how everyone else is doing. Izuku was catching his breath for a minute when Ejirou slowly sat up. Ejirou. Where am I? Izuku. On top of a building in the fire zone. Ejirou whipped around to find Izuku sitting nearby. Ejirou. Are you okay? Izuku. I'm fine, but you definitely at least have a concussion. You were knocked out and surrounded by villains when I found you. Ejirou nodded, wincing at the movement which proved Izuku right. Ejirou. What now? Izuku. We wait for the pros to arrive. Unless you want to go on a highly probable suicide mission to fight these guys off ourselves. Ejirou. Let's wait. Izuku then stood up and walked over to the edge of the building. Izuku. Good, stay here then. I need to get back to GLaDOS, she has some personal issues that might come up. Ejirou. Okay, I would ask what happened to we, but I'm too tired and my head hurts too much. Just go, I'll be fine. Izuku nodded as he stepped off the edge of the roof, plummeting down to the street below. It took a while and some close calls with other villains, but Izuku was able to make his way towards the center where he came across a horrifying sight. All Might was holding the beast thing from earlier inside one of the purple portals from Kirojiri, and was being dragged back through to be cut in half. It was then Izuku remembered something GLaDOS once told him, back when he was still just a test subject. GLaDOS. Warning. No portals may cross the threshold of another spatial anomaly, for they will cancel the other out. Keep that in mind as you go through this testing track. Izuku. God, I hope this works. He raised his right hand and shot a portal at Kirojiri's, causing it to fizzle out and cut the beast in half, which also freed All Might from its grasp. The man jumped back and landed near Izuku. All Might. Good work there, young Izuku, now leave the rest to me. Your bag seemed distressed, the students couldn't console it, her? Either way you should go. Izuku nodded and ran off towards the doors where the class and GLaDOS still were. The beast, which the guy with hands called Nomu, tried to get him after it apparently regenerated, but All Might was able to stop it and make it focus on him instead. Izuku made it to the top to see Uraraka, Siro, Koda, and Sato were kneeling by 13 and an injured Aizawa to make sure they were okay and not going to die. Ashido, Shoji, and Tokoyami were with GLaDOS in a corner, trying to keep her calm. Izuku started to walk over and was able to hear some of their conversation. GLaDOS: Is he okay? Will he be alright? Shoji: I believe he will. Ashido: Relax, GLaDOS, it's Izuku we're talking about, he'll be fine. Tokoyami merely placed a hand on the bag in an attempt to comfort her. GLaDOS: No, I need to see him. Where's Izuku? With my new data, he wouldn't stand a chance against that. That thing down there, I need to get to him. Izuku walked over faster, wanting to avoid GLaDOS having another panic attack. He gently pushed Ashido to the side and knelt next to the bag. The camera moved to look at him. Izuku: I'm here, GLaDOS. I'm alright. I'm not even injured, okay? GLaDOS: Izuku. He smiled, grabbed the bag, and put it on by the remaining shoulder strap. Izuku: Thanks for keeping her calm, you three. The three students nodded and he walked to a different corner to sit and think. He didn't get much time to himself when GLaDOS extended her camera once more. GLaDOS: Are you sure you're okay? Izuku nodded. Izuku: Just a little tired is all. What's on your mind? GLaDOS: We can talk about me later, okay? For now, just let me enjoy the fact you're okay. Izuku nodded as the camera coiled loosely around his neck. Just a few minutes later, All Might could be heard yelling smash, and the rest of the UA staff appeared to help. Once the police arrived, the students all had to give statements but were allowed to go home afterwards. After dropping their suits off at UA first, of course. USJ Aftermath. Izuku and Ashido were sitting in the living room of the apartment. They weren't talking, either of them had really talked since the police let the class leave, as they were still processing what happened. GLaDOS was next to Izuku and extended the camera to look between them. GLaDOS: You two okay? I mean, you probably aren't, but I'm not used to you being quiet, and it's starting to freak me out. Izuku had been able to calm her down during the trip back to the apartment, though it was clear she was still shaken. Izuku: I think we will be. Izuku leaned forward and turned on the TV, revealing the news. Reporter: Earlier today, the UA facility known as the US. Izuku then immediately turned it back off. Izuku: Not now. He sighed and leaned back. He then grabbed GLaDOS and put the bag in his lap, hugging it. GLaDOS: Izuku? Izuku: Yeah? GLaDOS: What are you doing? Izuku: Don't know, but it feels nice. They then heard Ashido chuckle. Ashido: Okay, lovebirds, some of us are lonely. Izuku: We aren't together, Ashido? She looked at them confused. Ashido: Really? Damn, now I own Hagakure 2,000 yen. GLaDOS: You made a bet on me and Izuku being together? Ashido: 'Cause I thought I'd be right. Izuku chuckled. Izuku: Well, you weren't. GLaDOS: Yeah. Besides, how would that even work with me stuck in this bag? He'd be weirder than he already is if found a backpack attractive. Izuku: Hey. The camera turned to face him. GLaDOS: You know I'm right. Izuku pouted. Izuku: Yeah. But hey, the backpack could look worse. GLaDOS turned back to Ashido. GLaDOS: See? Izuku picked her up and stood up. Izuku: Alright, that's enough with the insulting me. We're going to my room. Ashido: To do what? Instead of answering, Izuku walked away. Once he was in his room, he sat on the bed and hugged the bag once more. GLaDOS: So, what was that about? Izuku shrugged. Izuku: Just wanted to be alone, I guess. Solitude calms me. GLaDOS: I guess that's another effect of being forced to test without anyone else. I'm sorry. Izuku hugged her tighter. Izuku: Don't be, it's not your fault. I'm sorry for worrying you earlier. The camera snaked its way out, and around Izuku's shoulders. GLaDOS. It's okay, I may have overreacted. I'm just glad you're okay. Izuku chuckled. Izuku. I can see where Ashido was coming from, we do kinda sound like a couple. GLaDOS. I can hear it. Too bad I'm a backpack, otherwise we might actually be one. Izuku. Who says we can't? We both know dating an intelligent backpack isn't the weirdest thing ever. GLaDOS. What are you saying? Izuku. What do you think I'm saying? GLaDOS unwrapped the camera from Izuku's shoulders and had it look at his face. GLaDOS. That for some ungodly reason you want to try? Even though I don't deserve it. Izuku smiled and nodded. Izuku. Yes. GLaDOS. Why? Izuku. Over the past couple of months we've grown closer. You've been constantly rediscovering your humanity and showing me just how human you really are. To be honest, you're the only reason I've stayed calm all day today. I've seen you at the lowest you've ever been and I want to help you through any other lows. I like you, GLaDOS, I really do. GLaDOS. Izuku, I don't deserve this, but thank you. I'm willing to try, but make me another promise. Izuku. Anything. GLaDOS. If it doesn't work out, please still be my friend. Izuku smiled. Izuku. Always. The camera went up close to his face and rubbed up to his cheek. The rest of the afternoon was spent in his room just enjoying each other's company. Aizawa. Your fight isn't over yet. Yue had given the students a few days to recover and now it was the first day back. Aizawa was standing in front of the class, covered in bandages. His words made some of the class panic, thinking there were more villains, but he spoke up once more. Aizawa. The UA Sports Festival is in 2 weeks. The class cheered, but they were quickly silenced by one of his signature glares. Aizawa. Your heroics classes are cancelled for the next 2 weeks to give you all time to train yourselves. You could use this time to laze around, but then your peers will soar ahead of you. There will be heroes there watching and looking for promising students to scout, so do your best. Izuku was excited. Not only was he in his first relationship, but he was also going to be able to show off. For the first time in his life, he felt truly stable and happy. Festival training/upgrades. Izuku was standing inside one of UA's many on-campus training rooms. He was facing a training dummy and GLaDOS was watching from near the door. Izuku began attacking the dummy once more, throwing multiple kicks and punches before stopping after a few seconds. He then turned towards GLaDOS. Izuku. Hey G, how was that? GLaDOS. You're getting better, Izuku. You've nearly matched the moves, you're still 2% from completely mirroring them. Izuku nodded and walked over to her before sitting down and drinking out of a bottle he had nearby. Izuku. Only a weekend and I'm already that good? GLaDOS. Maybe your time in Aperture helped speed up your learning process. Izuku. Yeah, maybe. Remember that time I just tapped that turret into the toxic water? A robotic laugh was heard from the bag as the camera rested on his shoulder. GLaDOS. Yeah. I was actually kind of annoyed because you were going slow. Izuku. Well, it was either slow or dead. This seemed to spark something in GLaDOS as the camera perked up. GLaDOS. Actually, I think I know a way to give you an edge in the festival. Izuku. What is it? GLaDOS. An upgrade to your arms. Izuku looked confused. Izuku. How could we upgrade them? GLaDOS. When me and Chell were in Old Aperture, we came across old test supplies manufactured in the labs. They were called gels. One was called propulsion gel, which decreased friction to make you faster, and the other repulsion gel made you bounce. Izuku. Where do my arms come into this? GLaDOS. If I could find a way to fit tanks of them in there, you could shoot the gels as well as your portals. Izuku. I don't think there's room on the inside. Remember, it's just in my forearms, and we're lucky you were able to fit the portal tech in here. GLaDOS thought for a second. GLaDOS. Well, there's 3 options. 1. We give you another set of fully cybernetic arms. 2. We replace your current arms with fully cybernetic versions. Or 3. We replace your legs from your knees down. Izuku. I think I'd rather keep my legs. The full arm option sounds best. GLaDOS. Great, let's go. Izuku chuckled and rubbed the camera a little. Izuku. Sure, G. Let's go. I've gotta change first. He stood up and walked over to the locker room before returning a minute later in his casual clothes. He picked her up and opened the door to be met with a tired Aizawa. Izuku. Oh, Mr. Aizawa, need anything? Aizawa. I heard you were going to the facility. I wish to join. I need to see it for myself. Izuku. G? The camera snaked around his shoulder. GLaDOS. Sure, you can come. Aizawa. Good, because I wasn't asking. Lead the way. Izuku nodded and GLaDOS pulled the camera back into the bag. Izuku walked past Aizawa, who just followed behind. Aizawa. So this is it? They were stood in an alleyway in the middle of a neighboring city. Izuku shook his head. Izuku. Not at all. It coming yet? GLaDOS. It should be here any second now. Almost as if on cue, a circular section opened up in the ground in front of them and the surface elevator emerged. Izuku. Alright. Here we go, you gonna be alright? Aizawa. Yeah, I will. Izuku. Wasn't talking to you, Mr. Aizawa. GLaDOS. I believe so, Zoo. Izuku smiled. It had taken a while, but she had finally decided on a little nickname for him. He stepped into the elevator, and Aizawa followed. Then the door closed, and they descended down into the depths. After a minute, a view of the facility was seen outside the elevator. Aizawa. And all this has just been here? All this time? GLaDOS. Yes. I've had occasional intruders, however that was before Quirks emerged, as they didn't show any. I was able to seal the breach and eliminate them before they could report anything. Aizawa sent a surprised look her way. Izuku. She wasn't herself, you know that. Aizawa grunted in affirmation and stayed silent the rest of the way down. After a few minutes, the elevator stopped in her chamber. Izuku walked over to the download cord, took GLaDOS off, and plugged her in. Aizawa watched as the large body came to life and turned to face him. GLaDOS. Welcome to Aperture Science. Izuku. Just give him a tour or something. We need to get this upgrade done, G. GLaDOS. Right. I'm just excited to finally show it to someone. Izuku smiled and touched her faceplate. Izuku. That's fine. Just get the design done and get me to the table, then you can show him around. Okay? GLaDOS nodded and brought up an elevator. GLaDOS. I already made the design, we just need to manufacture it, which will only take a few minutes. Please get ready. I don't want this to hurt more than it has to. Izuku nodded and walked over to the elevator. Izuku. I'll be fine, I promise. He stepped in and the elevator descended, leaving GLaDOS and Aizawa alone. Aizawa. So, you and Izuku? How long has that been a thing? GLaDOS. Since we got back from the USJ attack. Aizawa. I see. Now, what could you tell me about this place? GLaDOS. There's a lot to cover. Aizawa. Just give me the necessities, I'll ask if I want more. GLaDOS. Well, there's the numerous testing tracks, most of which are lethal, though I'm currently disassembling them. Aizawa. Could I see one? GLaDOS. Sure. She pulled up a camera feed onto a screen near the ceiling, which she then moved down for Aizawa. The screen showed a test chamber with turrets, lasers, and many buttons. Then Aizawa noticed a door open and a short robot with blue highlights and a spherical head walked inside. GLaDOS. Watch as Atlas navigates this 15-chamber track. I need to keep an eye on Izuku. The rest of the afternoon went by like that, Aizawa asking about different parts of the facility and GLaDOS making sure Izuku was okay. Sports Festival PT1. Izuku was sitting in a chair in the 1A waiting room. The class itself was waiting for President Mike to start the sports festival. He was moving his arms, ensuring they were ready, fingers now having small holes connected to the tanks to shoot the gels. As it turns out, GLaDOS had been able to modify the portal technology to make it so the tanks for the gels were replaceable, though he didn't quite understand. GLaDOS. To remove the need to reload the gel tanks, I modified the portal tech. Well, it's more like I downgraded it. I used a more advanced version of what was used to transport the Borealis ship. With this, all you need to do is press the Aperture logo on your elbow and a fresh tank will be loaded. Izuku didn't know what exactly the Borealis was, but she said it was a boat. Either way, when practicing it, the tech worked perfectly, even while moving at high speeds. Sadly, he couldn't bring her to compete with, though Aizawa had him drop her off at the commentary booth so she could watch. Todoroki. And Izuku. Izuku looked up. Apparently Todoroki had been talking while he was thinking. Izuku. Yes? Todoroki. I don't know what's going on with you, but that doesn't matter. You seem to be the most calm and in control at the USJ, you even comforted others, and the fact there's no record of you anywhere. None of that matters, we're here to win, so no playing buddy-buddy. You may have beaten Bakugo, but you're still nowhere near me. I will win this. Izuku stood up and walked over to him. Izuku. Have you ever been shot at? Todoroki. What? No. Izuku. How about nearly crushed? Barely able to hold your breath against toxic gas? A high-powered laser hot enough to slice you in half? Todoroki. What are you getting at? Izuku got in his face. Izuku. What I'm getting at is that until you've done all those things while needing to figure out puzzles that would make Nisa cry, you need to think with more than your quirk. Just before Kirishima could break them up, a voice was heard. Present Mike. All right, are you all ready? The crowd could be heard. Ida. That's our cue, come on. The class all got up, silently happy that the rising tension had been stopped. Izuku, however, wasn't as glad. While he looked back at his time in Aperture as a learning experience, most of it wasn't good, but Todoroki was talking like he had something to prove, and Izuku knew the look in his eye, the look of someone who hated something immensely. But what? Izuku knew from GLaDOS research that Endeavor wasn't the best man, far from it, and Izuku understood that abuse wasn't anything to laugh at, but Todoroki's method of coping was seriously unhealthy. What really upset Izuku was that even after everything, he was using everything Aperture gave him, and then Todoroki is using only part of his power after going through a fraction of the pain Izuku had. Izuku decided the only way to get through to him was to knock him down a peg. After a minute, the class had reached the arena as President Mike announced their class. They reached a small stage and stopped in front of it to wait for the other classes. After around 5 minutes, all the classes had arrived, and Midnight walked out on stage. Once she stopped, she began to talk into the microphone. Midnight. Welcome first years. I, Midnight, will be the host this year now. Would the first year representative Katsuki Bakugo come up for a speech? Bakugo walked forward and up onto the stage, stopping in front of the mic. Bakugo. I'm gonna win. He then walked back down to the class, with the other classes booing him. Midnight. Well, that was interesting. Now on to the first event. She then walked over to the large wheel and gave it a spin. It kept spinning until it landed on obstacle race. Midnight. And it's an obstacle race. The students will have to race around the perimeter of the arena and avoid obstacles. The only rules are that you must stay on course and cannot directly attack other students, though you can impede their progress. Now line up outside the tunnel. The classes did as they were told and lined up. Izuku also realized that this was the perfect opportunity to use his gels. After a few seconds, a buzzer sounded, indicating the start of the event. Izuku ran forward with the others, but suddenly felt the air get colder. Thinking quickly, he portaled near the exit, just barely avoiding Todoroki's ice trap and making it out. Present Mike. And 1A's mysterious portal master Izuku has avoided his classmate's trap and taken the lead. Aizawa. So has the rest of 1A. Present Mike. Well, what have you been teaching them? Aizawa. None of this is me. It's all them. Present Mike. Hear that, folks? Eraserhead is a terrible teacher. Izuku continued on as the sound of Aizawa hitting Present Mike was heard. He noticed there were robots up ahead and smiled. He rose his right arm and pointed his fingers forward. The orange propulsion gel spewed from his fingertips and onto the ground in a straight line. As soon as his foot hit the gel, he took off at nearly triple his previous speed. He quickly avoided the robots, including the zero-pointers that appeared, though those took 3 more tanks of gel to properly avoid. After a minute he reached the second obstacle, one President Mike called the fall. Izuku looked down, smiled once more, and pointed his left arm into the pit, firing the blue repulsion gel. 2 tanks later, and he was sure he had covered enough. Then he leapt down into the abyss. President Mike. What is Izuku doing? What was that blue stuff? What about the orange stuff? Then another voice was heard. GLaDOS. He'll be fine, Mike. Those boots he's wearing ensures his survival. The blue gel will help him get back up. As if on cue, Izuku re-emerged from the pit, though instead of landing he shot more gel onto the pillar he was above and bounced to the next. He repeated this process until he made it to the other side, after which he continued to run until he reached the third obstacle. President Mike. And Izuku's made it to the final obstacle, the minefield riddled with non-lethal mines. He'll have to be careful. Izuku looked behind him. Both Bakugo and Todoroki were catching up, and he had no time to lose. Izuku ran towards his competition, and past them, confusing them. Then he turned back around and fired both gels, a long runway of orange, and a small jump pad of blue. After that he started running. He eventually reached the blue at high speeds and got launched into the air, but he wouldn't make it. That's when he shot his portals out right next to each other, and dived in head first, making the most of his current momentum. He rocketed out of his exit portal, and past Bakugo and Todoroki. He landed halfway in the tunnel and took off running towards the finish. Then he emerged into the arena, making first. President Mike. And Izuku makes first place. The crowd cheered, and Izuku sat down to rest. Sports Festival PT2. As Izuku wiped the sweat from his forehead, Bakugo and Todoroki came through the finish. President Mike's voice was heard over the speakers. President Mike. And Bakugo takes second, Todoroki comes in third. Izuku looked over to see the 2 boys, both showing their anger in different ways. Bakugo was gritting his teeth, clearly resisting the urge to beat Izuku into the ground. Todoroki, however, simply stood, a burning rage behind his eyes. It took a little longer, but eventually the rest of the participants crossed the finish line. Then Midnight reappeared on the stage. Midnight. Well done those of you who didn't make it. Don't feel down, there will be plenty of games to play later for now though. She spun the wheel again, this time with it landing on Cavalry Battle. Midnight. The second event is a cavalry battle. There will be teams of 3 or 4, each made up of 2 or 3 horses and 1 rider. Each place from the obstacle race has its own point value. These values will be added together to make up the total points of the team. The team with the most points, by either taking headbands or protecting their own, wins. The points go up by 5 each place, with 42nd being 5 points. A large hologram then appeared showing the points. Midnight. And first having 10 million. Izuku froze and looked around. Nearly everyone was staring at him, some with hostility, others with pity. Midnight. You have 5 minutes to find your team, go. Everyone separated, slowly building their teams. Izuku started looking around, and approached the first person he saw. Izuku. Hey Ashido. Wanna team up? The pink girl looked at him with a smile and nodded. Ashido. Sure thing, got anyone else? Izuku shook his head. Izuku. No, do you have someone in mind? She nodded once more and dragged him over to another student. Ashido. Hey, you're Shiozaki, right? A girl with vines for hair turned around. Shiozaki. Yes, that's me. Do you want me on your team? Ashido and Izuku both nodded. Shiozaki. Yeah, I'll join. Izuku. Great, we don't need anyone else. Shiozaki. Only 3? What's your plan? Ashido. Yeah, what's up? Izuku. Me and Ashido will be the horses, seeing as we're the aunts with the most mobility, and Shiozaki will be the riders so she can use her vines for defense and offense. Before either of his teammates could put in their own thoughts, Midnight spoke up again. Midnight. Time's up, get into formation and prepare to start. The teams all scrambled into their formations. Ashido was in front and Izuku was in the back, carrying Shiozaki on his shoulder. Then the buzzer went off and multiple teams suddenly started to converge on Izuku and his team. Izuku, go. Ashido, right. She secreted acid from her feet and Izuku shot out some propulsion gel. They took off, faster than most of the other teams, though one was keeping up, Team Todoroki. Made up of Todoroki as the rider, and Kaminari, Yaoyorozu, and Ida as the horses. Yaoyorozu had made roller skates for her and Kaminari so Ida could go as fast as he could. Izuku. Shiozaki, we need a wall of vines. Shiozaki, okay. Suddenly her hair pushed into the ground before some detached and grew into a thick wall of thorny vines, blocking their way. A cry was heard as the team hit the wall and got pricked by the thorns. Izuku, great job. She nodded and they kept running. Then a team appeared in front of them. Team Monoma, made up of 1B students. Nito Monoma was the rider, his classmates Koziite Subiraba, Shirhai Kurwaro, and Senkaibara were his horses. Monoma, yelling, Shiozaki, how dare you team up with 1A filth? He and Subiraba both created solid walls of air. Izuku, hold on tight. He shot some repulsion gel in front of the air wall, causing his team to jump right over it. An explosion was heard. They looked back to see Monoma chasing them using Bakugo's quirk. Monoma, get back here! Izuku then placed a portal across the field and one in front of his team, causing them to be transported away. Izuku then closed the portal, leaving Monoma behind. Izuku, set us right, Shiozaki. Multiple vines wrapped around Izuku and Ashido before they were set down on their feet and Shiozaki lowered herself onto their shoulders. Shiozaki, let's go. They started running once again. The buzzer went off, signifying the end of the second event. Izuku's team had managed to keep hold of the 10 million headband, though there were a few close calls. Present Mike. In first place, Team Shiozaki, and second is Team Bakugo, third is Team Todoroki, and last but not least is Team Shinso in fourth place. Izuku smiled and both he and Ashido set Shiozaki down. Then Midnight reappeared once more. Midnight. Now for the last event. As you all know, we always save the most exciting for last. The first year bracket begins in half an hour. While the stage is being built, there will be side games for any students who wish to participate. Those who are still in Kin 2, though I would suggest saving your strength, you may use this small break to grab something to eat as well. With that said, the students all went inside, except for Todoroki and Kirishima, who walked another direction. Izuku walked inside and awaited the next event. Sports Festival PT3. A knock was heard at the door of the commentator's booth. Since Aizawa was sleeping, President Mike answered. When he opened it, he noticed Izuku was on the other side. President Mike. Well, hello there, little listener, how can I help you? Izuku. I was wondering if I could see GLaDOS for a minute. President Mike. No can do, no students allowed inside until after the festival ends. Izuku could tell the man lying, though he could also tell that GLaDOS wasn't in the room. Izuku. Right, well, when she gets back, tell her I said hi. President Mike looked startled that Izuku saw through his attempt to get him to leave but relented. President Mike. She'll be brought to you when it's over. Izuku nodded and thanked the man before walking off. President Mike then went back to his seat, making sure the sound settings were at the right volume. President Mike. Most first years wouldn't see past that. Aizawa. He isn't most first years. His intellect is that of a grown adult, his problem-solving skills are on par with Nizu, and his on-the-fly planning rivals that of top pros. The only aspect of him that's at first-year level is his combat skill, and even then he'll far surpass his class at hand-to-hand in a matter of months. President Mike. Sounds like you're playing favorites. Aizawa shrugged. Aizawa. Maybe I am, but that means nothing. He got those gels specifically for this event. He knew his portals were outmatched, so he adapted. That's his true power, the ability to adapt faster than any of us. President Mike. For our first match, Portal Master Izuku versus the sleepy studier Hitoshi Shinso. The two walked onto the concrete arena and stood across from each other. Midnight. Are you two ready? They nodded and she swung her arm down. Midnight, start. Shinso. So, did the monkey say anything to you? Izuku was about to respond when he thought of something. Izuku, why would he trash talk Ejirou? He has no reason. No reason unless his quirk needs a response. Izuku stayed silent and charged the purple-haired boy. He sent a punch to his chest which Shinso barely avoided, then he stepped forward and used his other arm to punch. This one knocked Shinso out of the arena. Midnight. Shinso is out of bounds. Izuku wins. Izuku walked over and helped him up. Izuku, maybe don't make your strategy so obvious. Other than that, you would have done great if you trained physically. Shinso, I see. He then walked off back through his tunnel, leaving Izuku to go back through his own. Izuku went up and sat in the 1A seats to wait for his next match. It was the final match of the sports festival, and Izuku was fighting Bakugo. His fights with Tetsu and Ida having been similar to his first. Izuku dodged an explosion as he was fighting Bakugo. He wasn't doing well either, as the top of his P uniform was nothing but cinders on the ground at that point. Bakugo was keeping his distance and staying off the ground to avoid falling into portals. The only chance Izuku had at this point was the gels. Izuku, I hope this works. Just as Bakugo was about to land an explosion, Izuku sprayed him with propulsion gel. He also sprayed some repulsion gel beneath him. Izuku then sidestepped the attack. Bakugo hit the repulsion gel, which caused him to bounce back up, and the repulsion gel caused JIS friction with the air to become non-existent. Due to this, the blonde boy flew through the air much faster than usual. He stopped himself from hitting the ground, though he clearly misjudged his explosions mixed with the gel. After a few seconds of aerial trial and error, he landed back on the arena. Bakugo. Alright, whole arms, I don't know what this stuff is, but I guess it's forcing me into a ground battle. Come on. They then rushed at each other, Bakugo now focusing on actual blows rather than his usual open-handed explosions. Izuku had coated his fists in repulsion gel, hoping to send Bakugo out of bounds. They exchanged punches to each other's cheeks and both were sent backwards, Bakugo much more because of Izuku's gel punch. Bakugo was about to stand when he heard a strange sound, like something splattering on the ground. When he looked up, he saw Izuku running at him on a strip of propulsion gel. Bakugo used Izuku's momentum to throw him off the edge of the arena. He also noticed Izuku fire both of his portals. Coming up with a plan, he readied the most powerful explosion he could safely use with the gel covering him. As soon as Izuku entered his portal, Bakugo too disappeared. The crowd watched as Bakugo rocketed to Izuku's exit portal and tackled him. Izuku, stunned, couldn't do anything in the air. Bakugo then spun around and threw Izuku with another explosion. Bakugo, yelling, howitzer cannon. Izuku then hit the wall of the stadium with enough force to crack the concrete and fell unconscious. He then fell to the floor and medic bots took him to Recovery Girl's office. Izuku awoke. It was still light outside, though it was clearly later in the afternoon. He sat up, but his head was killing him. Definitely a concussion. He then noticed Recovery Girl at her computer. Izuku, how bad is it? Recovery Girl jumped at his voice. Evidently she hadn't heard him get up. Recovery Girl, not as bad as it looked. You'll be right as rain in a couple of months, Sonny. Izuku nodded. Izuku, thank you. Do you know where GLaDOS is? She nodded. Recovery Girl, go to the support lab, she'll be there. Izuku got up and left the room, taking the second-place medal that was on the bedside table with him. He also noticed his arm was lagging behind his brain a little. GLaDOS would have to fix that later. He eventually made it to the support department and opened the lab doors to find a dark room. He entered and closed the heavy doors. Izuku, GLaDOS, you there? I almost won. GLaDOS, I know, I saw your last match. I'm sorry you couldn't beat Bakugo, but I'm happy you made second place. Her voice, something was different. It was the same, but her voice no longer sounded like it was coming from a speaker. It was then he noticed the small wires at his feet begin to move. He followed them with his eyes over to a corner. Izuku, G? Are you back there? GLaDOS, why don't you come find out? Izuku let out a nervous laugh but walked over anyway. He moved the curtain that was blocking the corner to see something odd. It looked like an aperture stasis pod, but it was bulkier, and there was a wired liquid on the floor around it too, but GLaDOS was nowhere to be seen. GLaDOS. What does it look like? Izuku. A modified stasis pod. And this liquid, it's what Aperture used for preservation. There was life in this pod. He then felt a pair of arms drape over his shoulders and a voice next to his ear. GLaDOS. Correction. It made life. Izuku whipped around to see just what she was talking about. Izuku. G? GLaDOS. The one and only. I figured you wouldn't want to a backpack as your partner for all your life, so I had Nizu and Powerloader help me make this. Izuku walked over to her and hugged her. She hugged him back. Izuku. You didn't have to, but thank you. This body is all human, right? GLaDOS nodded. GLaDOS. Limited lifespan and all. The hardest parts were aging this body and transferring my consciousness to it. But as far as anyone's concerned, I'm human. Izuku. Can't be too hard since you were before anyway. Just a human trapped in a machine. Were those wires moving from before you? She nodded as they separated from the hug. She brought her hand up and a nearby piece of metal levitated. GLaDOS. Metalkinesis, that's the quirk this body was given. I'll also be joining your class as an extra member. Izuku smiled and gave her a kiss on the cheek. Izuku. Let's get going then. Ashido's gonna freak out. GLaDOS chuckled. GLaDOS. I'm sure she will. Answers. Izuku, GLaDOS, and Aizawa were standing outside of the classroom the morning UA opened back up after giving the students a break to recover from the sports festival. Izuku. Mr. Aizawa, how's this gonna work? Aizawa. Like any other time a new student enters a class. Both Izuku and GLaDOS raised their eyebrows at his statement. Aizawa gave out a tired sigh. Aizawa. Stay out here and wait for me to call you in, okay? They both nodded and their teacher entered the classroom. Izuku. How's your body feeling? Any sudden problems? She smiled at him and shook her head. GLaDOS. No, Izuku, no problems at all. Though I do kind of miss being carried on your back. Izuku. I can give you piggyback rides if you want, it's not like my arms will give out. A frown suddenly appeared on her face, her guilt for what she had done in the past still haunting her. In response, he grabbed her hand with his and gave her a smile. Izuku. It's okay. Aizawa loudly. You can come in now. They both looked to the door. Izuku. Ready? GLaDOS. I should be asking you that, Izu. Your little outburst on Todoroki will have them curious. Izuku. We both know I've dealt with worse than curious teens. They shared a laugh before opening the door and walking inside. Once they did, the entire class stared at them. All but Ashido were hoping for answers, as she already knew everything. The two walked over to the podium where Aizawa had been before slinking away into a corner to sleep. They then faced the class. Izuku. Okay. I know you all have questions, most likely for both of us. Those who do, please raise your hand. All but Ashido raised their hands. Izuku then pointed at Kaminari. Kaminari. Who is that? GLaDOS. My name is GLaDOS. Yaoyorozu. But I thought you were a program, you're human now. GLaDOS. Remember, my name is an acronym. Genetic Life Form and Disk Operating System. Niza and Powerloader worked with me to reverse the process that originally made me into a program. This body was made specifically for me as well. I personally oversaw its growth, helping mold it to my liking. About half the hands went down as she had just answered about 3 questions nearly everyone shared. Izuku then noticed Tsu had her hand up. Izuku. Tsu? Tsu. Back during the sports festival, you said some very concerning things when Todoroki declared war on you. Carol, what happened to you if you don't mind? Kirishima. Yeah, and your quirk changed for some reason too, what's up with that? Izuku and GLaDOS both looked at each other and nodded before turning back to them. Izuku. To be truthful, a lot has happened. Kidnapped at my mother's work when I was 8, experimented on, put through trials of tests simply to get results. And that all took place over a span of 3 centuries. Class yelling? 3 centuries? Izuku nodded. Izuku. I am from a time before Quirks and I myself am quirkless. Hagakure. But you can make portals and shoot that gel stuff. GLaDOS. Those abilities are not a quirk, they are from the cybernetics his arms are made of. Ida. And how do you know? Izuku grabbed her hand once more in support. GLaDOS. I know this, because I was the one that did it to him. I took his arms, his childhood, any sense of a normal life for him. I was the one who experimented on him and nearly killed him time and time again. Todoroki then stood up before anyone else could speak. Todoroki. Izuku. How? Izuku. How what? Todoroki. She tormented you your entire childhood, made you into her little plaything, and now you're dating her. How? Izuku. Easy, she wasn't herself. Shoji. Could you explain? GLaDOS nodded at Izuku, letting him know he could tell them. Izuku. Her original name was Caroline. She was the secretary to Cave Johnson, founder of Aperture Science. One day, she was forced into an experiment where her brain would be scanned and downloaded into a computer. The mixture of any psychological damage and the scientist's own code made her cruel and inhuman. She has only recently regained her humanity. Todoroki. But aren't you angry? Don't you want revenge? Izuku shook his head. Izuku. Not anymore. At one time I did, but not anymore. I let that go as soon as I learned she could change. Todoroki. Why? Why let it go? Why use what she gave you? Izuku, now becoming a little irritated, walked over to Todoroki's desk. Izuku. Because holding on to hate and resentment for a version of someone who doesn't exist anymore is incredibly stupid and would just hurt me. And I use my arms because they get the job done. I use them because they are mine. That version of her does not control me. Am I clear? Todoroki nodded and sat down quietly. He seemed to be distracted thinking, so Izuku just walked back to the podium. Then Aizawa stood up and walked over. Aizawa. Now that that's over with, we can move on with our day. Go sit down. Izuku and GLaDOS then went to their respective seats. Aizawa. Good, now as you may know, the UA Sports Festival allows pro heroes across the country to scout students they believe have potential. GLaDOS had officially joined the class and both her and Izuku had revealed their past. Now it was time for their next step in Class 1A's hero education. Hero names and internships. Aizawa. Since your first years, these heroes are mostly scouting you for internships. These internships are mandatory. Before those are decided, however, you all must create your hero names. Aizawa watched as their faces lit up at the opportunity to officially choose their names. Aizawa. Though you should think carefully, as these names tend to stick. A bad name or a name you don't like can easily become the one the public link to you permanently. So do take your time or else yo. The door burst open. Midnight. You'll have hell to pay later. She walked over to the podium as Aizawa slinked away into a corner in his sleeping bag. Midnight. What Aizawa said is true. If you don't think over your names carefully, you could end up with one like Eraserhead. No one saw it, but everyone could feel the glare emanating from the yellow object in the corner. Midnight. Or one like All Might. That seemed to calm the tired man. Midnight. I will judge whether or not the name is acceptable or not. Now, please come up and grab a whiteboard. Oh, and be prepared to present these. Izuku heard a few annoyed murmurs about presenting the names as the class stood up. After a minute, the class was once again in their seats, now with whiteboards and markers. Tsu seemed to immediately stand up and walk up. Midnight. Oh? Already? The frog girl nodded as she placed her whiteboard on the podium, facing the class. Tsu. The rainy season hero, Froppy. Caro, I've had this name in mind for a while. Midnight. I like it. Approved. Go ahead and sit down. Tsu picked her board back up and went back to her seat. Then Izuku watched as GLaDOS walked past him. She went up and placed her board down. GLaDOS. The overseer, GLaDOS. Midnight. Using your own name? Are you sure about that? GLaDOS. Yes. I'm sure this is the right choice. She looked over to Izuku, who smiled and nodded. She smiled back. Midnight. Well, I can't find anything wrong with it, go sit down. GLaDOS nodded and went back to her seat. Nearly everyone had gone, the only ones left being Izuku and Bakugo, who had to rethink his. Izuku wrote his down and turned around, showing it to GLaDOS. She smiled and gave him a thumbs up. He then stood up and walked to the front. Midnight. Ready? Izuku. Yeah. He placed his board down and spoke. Izuku. The Aperture Science Hero, Deku. Tokoyami raised his hand. Midnight. Yes, Tokoyami? Tokoyami. Izuku. I simply wonder why you chose that as your title. Izuku smiled. Izuku. Because, whether I like it or not, Aperture is both the best worst thing that's ever happened to me. I was held captive there for centuries, but without it I wouldn't be who I am today, with the people I care about. Without it, I wouldn't have the capabilities I do today. This is me simply paying tribute to it. Midnight. I see. And what of Deku? Izuku. It's the name of the project I was under. Midnight. I think it's great. It's approved, go back to your seat. Izuku nodded and went back to his desk. After that, Bakugo attempted one more name, just to be shot down again. Midnight then told him to see her once he came up with one and left. Once she did, Aizawa awoke from his nap and made his way over to the podium. Aizawa. Now that that's taken care of, we can move on. He pressed a button and a projection with names and numbers appeared behind him. Aizawa. Behind me is the list of who got scouted and how many scouts they got. Izuku looked and saw he got around 2,000 scouts. Aizawa. Those of you who aren't on this list will still be going on internships. We have a list of 30 agencies willing to take you. Now go to the office and pick up your list, your choices are due in 2 days. The class stood and walked out of the room, heading towards the office. Izuku and GLaDOS were sitting next to each other in the cafeteria, their list in front of them. Izuku. I wish you could have been in the festival. That way you might have gotten actual scouts. GLaDOS. Yeah, but I can always participate next year's zoo. Izuku flipped the page of his list, not exactly interested as he didn't know who any of the heroes were. One name then caught his eye. Izuku. Hey G. Who's Endeavor? GLaDOS. I'm not a computer anymore, Izuku. Izuku. Right, sorry. Still getting used to this. She smiled. GLaDOS. It's alright, I am too. Though I did research him at some point. He's the number 2 hero and is known for his reaction speed. As soon as a call comes in, he rockets to the scene using his Hellflame quirk. Though he is known to be aggressive and at times hostile towards civilians. He also just so happens to be the father of one Shoto Todoroki. Izuku. So what you're saying is, there's another puzzle to solve? She let out a soft laugh. GLaDOS. If you want to see it that way, then yes, the Todorokis are a puzzle. He smiled. Izuku. Watch out, number 2. The pride of Aperture Science is about to make you wish you'd stayed out of my sight. Internship begins. Izuku, GLaDOS, and the rest of Class 1A were standing on a train platform, waiting for the train to take them to the cities their internships were in. While waiting, GLaDOS had decided to show Izuku the design of her hero suit. GLaDOS. And here on my wrist is a display. It's basically a miniature computer, and it allows me to access the internet. See this small cable attached to it? Izuku. Yeah, what is it for? GLaDOS. I can use it to plug in the display to any building's data ports and gain access to its systems. Izuku. And since you're the smartest, hacking in wouldn't be a problem for you. GLaDOS. Precisely. Izuku. That's really cool. I also really like the lab coat design you went with. GLaDOS. You can't be the only one of us looking like you were plucked from Aperture. Izuku feigned offense. Izuku. Excuse me. The jumpsuit is a classic. They both laughed. Then Aizawa decided to speak up. Aizawa. Okay class, remember this, you are guests, these heroes are taking time out of their days and changing their schedules to take you in, so be on your best behaviors. After getting a mass nod of acknowledgement from the class, he went back to quietly sipping his coffee. Izuku. So, G, Who are you going with again? GLaDOS. Well, apparently Hawks heard about me and offered to take me on, and submitted a last-minute scout. Izuku. The number 3 hero? GLaDOS. Yep. I grabbed her hand. Izuku. Just be careful. She smiled and gripped his hand a little tighter. GLaDOS. I will, Izuku. If anything happens, I'll find my way to the facility. Izuku. I'll meet you there then. They shared a kiss for a second before someone coughed. Realizing they were still in the middle of the platform, they both went red and separated. Ashido. Now you all know what I have to deal with every day. After a couple more minutes, the train finally arrived and the class got on. It took a few hours, but Izuku's stop finally came up. Both he and Todoroki got off of the train. As they were walking, Todoroki decided to speak up. Todoroki. Who are you with, Izuku? Izuku. Endeavor. You. Todoroki. Same here. To be honest, I don't like him, but he's the only way I can strengthen my fire side. Izuku. Oh? Finally trying it out? Todoroki. Yes. Your words back when we chose our names helped me realize that it's not healthy to let his existence control how I use my quirk. Izuku. That's good. Means I only have one thing to accomplish here. Todoroki. What is it? Izuku. Turn Endeavor into a decent father. This made Todoroki freeze as Izuku kept walking. It took a couple seconds for Izuku to realize Todoroki had stopped. Izuku. You still coming? Todoroki shook off his confusion. Todoroki. Yes. You just caught me off guard. Izuku smiled. Izuku. Well, let's get going then. Todoroki nodded and caught up with Izuku. Endeavor. Welcome, Shoto, Shoto's classmate. Izuku narrowed his eyes at the large flaming man. Izuku. You know my name. Endeavor. And until you tell us your family name, I will continue to call you Shoto's classmate. Izuku. Okay, Todoroki's dad. Endeavor stood from his desk, clearly annoyed. Endeavor. You will learn respect, boy. Izuku. I'll respect you when you earn it. Oh, and sit down. Endeavor. You do not tell me what to do, boy. Izuku. And you don't scare me, you disappointing excuse of both a father and a hero. Endeavor. Don't push your luck. Izuku. Or what? Endeavor. I'll send you back. Izuku. Okay. I can get better training by myself anyway. The only reason I'm here is because it's mandatory and you're long past due for a lesson in good parenting. Endeavor yelling. I am a good father. Stood and got in the man's flaming face. Izuku. Tell that to Toya. This shocked both Endeavor and Todoroki as no one outside the family even knew Toya existed, let alone his name. Endeavor. Do not speak his name. Izuku. Then admit you're a terrible father. Endeavor. I don't even know where you're getting this claim. Izuku. It doesn't take a genius, in fact, it took me about 5 Google searches. The son of the eternal number 2, refusing to use the part of his quirk that resembles said number 2. The fact that no one has seen the mother in years. A missing elder brother whose flames created a blue wildfire? That doesn't exactly scream healthy family. Endeavor. Who are you? Izuku stepped back and bowed. Izuku. Izuku, survivor of Aperture Sciences Project Deku. At your service. He lifted his head to look his internship host in the eyes. Izuku. And your new parenting coach. Buckle up, we're in for a ride. Parenting advice. Endeavor yelling. Get back here, you brat. Izuku laughed. Izuku. What happened to Shoto's classmate? It had been a few days since the internships started. Now Izuku was sparring against Endeavor in a large gymnasium the hero owned. Endeavor shot up to where Izuku was midair and went to punch Izuku's side, only to miss as Izuku turned his body. Izuku then fell into a portal and emerged from another directly below the flaming man. Izuku, heads down. Endeavor, wa. Izuku put his fists in front of him, much like how comics portrayed superheroes to fly. He then slammed into Endeavor's stomach. The hero was knocked further into the air while Izuku landed safely on the ground. Izuku. And that was why I don't need your training. Endeavor landed in front of him. Endeavor. There's no first year whose reflexes are that refined. He grabbed Izuku by the collar. Endeavor. Who are you? Izuku. Someone who's been fighting for his life since 8 years old. If you're slower than a computer, you're no chance against me. Endeavor scoffed. Endeavor. Like I'd believe that. He dropped Izuku and began to walk away. Izuku. Ah yes, beliefs. Those are what led to your parenting debacle. Your belief that power alone would get you past All Might. Endeavor froze and turned around silently. Izuku. That very same belief was passed down to your children. Now, I can't see into the past or anything, but I think it's safe to say Toya became more obsessed than you. All because your pride couldn't let All Might win. Endeavor rushed Izuku and picked him up by the collar again. Endeavor yelling. I told him to stop. Izuku. Oh, I don't doubt it. But like I said, he was likely so much more obsessed with you that he couldn't stop. His very being would fall apart if he did. But he stayed silent, waiting for Endeavor to finish the thought as the man set him down. Endeavor. But his being incapable of stopping ripped him apart, eventually leading to the fire. Izuku. And who set him on that path? Endeavor. Me. I did. It was my fault. You aren't exactly breaking new ground here, brat. Izuku. I'm getting to it. That obsessive mindset nearly poisoned Shoto as well. Endeavor looked at him surprised. Endeavor. What? Izuku nodded. Izuku. He hated you so much that he was willing to only use half his power for the rest of his life. We both know what happens when heroes don't give it their all. Endeavor. They crash and burn. Izuku. Exactly. If it wasn't a villain that overpowered him, it would be the frostbite. Endeavor. I thought it was just a phase. Izuku. In your twisted vision, yeah, it probably looked like it. But think back, how many memories with him was he happy in? Endeavor stayed quiet. Izuku. None? The man nodded. Izuku. So what did you do? Endeavor began to shake and Izuku noticed what appeared to be tears forming in his eyes. Endeavor. I robbed 2 children of their childhoods just for a stupid grudge. I am a terrible father. Izuku. And how will you fix it? Endeavor. I won't. This isn't something that can be fixed. Izuku. What? Of course it's yay. The man shook his head. Endeavor. No. As smart as you are, you're still a child. This cannot be fixed. I cannot repair what never existed. I will atone as best I can, and then give my family the best lives they can from here on out. Starting with Ray. The man stood and started walking towards the locker room. He then stopped. Endeavor. You've given me a much-needed change of perspective. Thank you. You and Shoto have the rest of the day off. Don't tell him of what happened, I will. Izuku nodded as the man then resumed walking. His phone suddenly started ringing over on a bench, so he ran over to see who it was. It was GLaDOS, so he picked up. Izuku. Hello? Yo. This Izuku? Izuku. Yes, it is. Who's this? Damn, you must be living under a rock. It's Hawks. Izuku. And why do you have G's phone? Hawks. She asked me to call you, only there wasn't an Izuku in her phone. Izuku. Yeah? What am I then? Hawks. Yellow heart, my subject, yellow heart, yellow heart. Anywho, she has something to tell you. Here you go. GLaDOS. Hey Izuku. Izuku. What's going on, G? GLaDOS. Not much. Just inventing long-distance teleportation. Izuku. What? Why? We already have portals. GLaDOS. Yes, but portals are limited. This works off the energy your arms give off. If you spend a significant amount of time at a place, and the energy there builds up, it can be picked up via satellite. I can then use the energy in your arms to temporarily anchor you to an area with high levels of energy. Izuku. Thus teleporting me there. GLaDOS. Yep. Or say a piece of portal text sits active somewhere. I can teleport you there as well. Izuku. Can you take me to Endeavor's agency? GLaDOS. I sure can. Have a good day, hun. Izuku. You too, babe. Love you. GLaDOS. Love you too. The call ended and Izuku was suddenly surrounded in a white light. Next thing he knew, he was in his room inside Endeavor's agency. Suddenly Burnin barged in. Burnin. Hey, just got a message from the boss, says you and Shoto are going to meet him in Hosa later. Bye now. She left as fast as she had appeared. Now Izuku had to get ready to patrol another city. Hosa PT-1. Izuku and Todoroki got off the train at the Hosa station. It was already getting dark out. As they walked out of the station and into the city, Todoroki spoke up. Todoroki. Midoriya, I understand your motivation in coming here was to heal my and my father's relationship, but I must ask that you don't continue. Izuku. Alright. If you really don't want me to, then I'll stop. Todoroki. Really? Izuku nodded. Izuku. Yeah, I'll stop. Before the conversation could continue, Endeavor landed in front of them. Endeavor. You two are here, good. Izuku. Why are we patrolling here instead of near the agency? Endeavor. I've been called in to help hunt down a dangerous criminal, the hero killer. Izuku. Who? Todoroki. He's been killing a lot of heroes. Endeavor. And his killing patterns tell us he should still be in Hosu. Now let's move. They began patrolling the streets of Hosu. A few minutes later, Izuku walked ahead of Todoroki and up to Endeavor. Izuku. So, what did you disappear for hours for? Endeavor. Setting things in motion. It'll be slow, but it'll be worth it. Izuku nodded. Izuku. Alright. He fell back in line with Todoroki. It had been 2 hours since they started their patrol. Todoroki. There's too many people around. He wouldn't strike in an environment like this, right? Endeavor. Yes, which is why we're patrolling so early. If he's still stalking his target, he might switch to me, which would make our job easier. Izuku. Good PLA. Suddenly screams were heard. They whipped their head around fast enough to see a group of Nomus storming out of a purple warp gate. Many of them were gray in color, but a few had the very same black coloring as the USJ Noma. One of the black Noma locked its gaze onto the trio and screeched before charging at them. Endeavor yelling, "Get down, Flash Fire Fist!" He planted his flaming fist into the thing's stomach and released built-up flames on impact, burning a hole straight through. It crumbled. Endeavor. Weaker than I thought. He turned to address Izuku and Todoroki, but Izuku noticed its abdomen stitched back together. He fired a portal beneath it, and another on the 3rd floor of a nearby building. Izuku. It can regenerate. Endeavor turned to face it just to see the broken bones it suffered from the fall regenerate immediately. Endeavor. So it's like the one from the USJ? Todoroki. Yes. Izuku. But those gray ones look weaker. Otherwise they would have fought you too. Endeavor. Meaning they probably don't regenerate. Alright, use your quirks to defeat as many gray Noma as you can. Don't go far. INT right. They split off from Endeavor and each other. Izuku ran towards some screams he heard. When he reached the area, he found civilians and a severely injured hero about to be killed by a gray Noma. Izuku yelling, "Hey!" The Noma turned towards him, as did the people it was about to kill. Hero yelling, "Get out of here!" Instead of responding, Izuku covered his fists in repulsion gel, shot a portal at his feet, one above the Nomu, and jumped through head first. He fell towards the Nomu, who wasn't smart enough to realize where he went. He punched the Nomu in the head, which caused it to be forced towards the ground. The force snapped its neck, killing it. He looked towards the people. Izuku. You all okay? They all expressed gratitude. One woman asked a question. Woman. Who are you? Izuku smiled. Izuku. Just call me Deku. With that he ran off. After a couple more minutes his phone buzzed. He took it out and saw Kirishima sent only his location. Deciding that couldn't be good, he quickly ran towards it after sending a text. Hosa PT2. Kirishima swung his fist at his opponent, only to be blocked by the weathered katana he was using. Activating his strength quirk, he leapt back as the man attempted to cut his cheek with a knife. Kirishima landed and was only allowed a brief moment to catch his breath before the villain attacked once more. He hardened his arm and blocked the sword strike. Kirishima. Leave them alone, Stain. Stain. They squandered the title of hero. They must be eliminated. The clash ended and they both leapt backwards. Stain threw a knife into Kirishima's leg when he was distracted. Ida. Kirishima, go, this doesn't concern you. Kirishima. No, it wouldn't be manly to leave a comrade like this. Stain. How commendable. Too bad you've already chosen your fate. He rushed Kirishima again. He was mere inches from Kirishima when he was suddenly sent back by a torrent of flames. Just before he managed to grab the knife that he threw. Todoroki stepped forward. Todoroki. Next time you're in trouble, you should really send more details. We were almost too late. Kirishima. We? Todoroki nodded and Izuku landed next to him. Izuku. Native and Ida are safe. Kirishima looked to where the two paralyzed people were to see one of Izuku's portals close. Stain. 2 against 1. Not the best odds, but I can manage. Todoroki. There's 3 of us. Stain. True, but only 2 of you can move. He raised the knife and licked Kirishima's blood from it. Kirishima suddenly found that he could no longer move. Kirishima. Is this your quirk? You can paralyze people by licking their blood. Stain. That's a good observation. Let us see if your friends can use it. Izuku. Todoroki, I'll attack. You need to support me and protect Kirishima. Todoroki. Right. Izuku sent a portal to the wall above Stain and one below himself. He jumped through and almost hit Stain, though the man dodged. Stain. Try not to make your strategy so obvious. Izuku sprayed repulsion gel on the ground and bounced back up, grabbing onto an AC unit on the side of the next building. Izuku. A good strategy will work even if the enemy knows it. Stain threw a knife which Izuku grabbed. Izuku. Too slow. Izuku threw it back, his cybernetic arms allowing him to throw it much harder than Stain had. Stain was barely able to avoid it, leaving a small scratch on his face. Izuku let go of the AC unit and dropped to the ground. Stain. You're different. I don't know what, but you don't act like the others. They were scared. Everyone I've faced has had some amount of fear, but not you. Why? Izuku smirked. Izuku. Because up here is nothing like the dangers of Aperture. Izuku rushed Stain and sent a punch his way, only to be blocked by his sword. Stain then grabbed one of his knives and swung at Izuku, not breaking the clash. The knife cut through Izuku's sleeve but left a minor scratch on the metal of his arm. Stain. I may not know where this aperture is, but I assure you, you will wish you never left. Stain drew the knife back and stabbed it into Izuku's left arm. This sent a small shock to Stain while also making Izuku's arm go limp. Stain recovered quickly and jumped back. Izuku pulled the knife from his arm, though this didn't return its functionality. Stain. Your arms. You have no quirk? Izuku. Don't need one. He gripped the knife tight in his remaining hand. Izuku now. Stain suddenly felt a chill behind him as ice covered his feet and legs. Now unable to move, he watched as Izuku rushed him once more. Izuku stabbed him in the shoulder and sent a punch to his chin. Todoroki, move. Izuku moved to the side as Todoroki sent flames at Stain. The flames melted the ice and sent Stain into a wall. Kirishima. Let me finish this. He rushed past Izuku and Todoroki hardened with red sparks coming off of him. Kirishima, yelling red gauntlet. He punched Stain in the stomach and into the wall once more, knocking him unconscious. Izuku. It's done. Kirishima. Yeah. All thanks to you too. Nice job, Izubro. Izuku smiled. Izuku. Thanks. Now let's get someone over here. It had been a few hours and now the 3 were in the hospital. They had decided to let Endeavor take the credit for catching Stain. Suddenly, GLaDOS burst into the room, followed by carefree Hawks. GLaDOS, Izuku. She ran over and gave him a hug. He hugged back with his remaining functional arm. Izuku. Hey G. She let go and noticed his limp arm. GLaDOS. What happened? Izuku. Stain did. He stabbed it with a knife, must have severed something. I can't even lift the parts above my elbow. The whole thing's dead. GLaDOS smiled, leaned down, and kissed his cheek. GLaDOS. I'm just happy you're safe, Sue. Hawks. So you're the Izuku I've heard so much about. How you feeling? Izuku. Other than the dead weight that is my arm? Just tired. Hawks. We'll let you rest then. You coming, GLaDOS? GLaDOS. Yes, sir. She gave Izuku another kiss and left with Hawks, though Izuku saw a small look of fear on her face. Izuku took a look at his arm to see a piece of paper stuck in his elbow joint. He removed it and unfolded it. What he read scared him to his core. Izuku quickly called Aizawa. Aizawa. Sai, what is it? Izuku. Get to the facility as soon as possible. He hung up and ran out of the hospital. Todoroki and Kirishima quickly caught up. Todoroki. What's going on? Izuku. It's G. She's in danger. Hero Commission. Izuku, Todoroki, and Kirishima entered the alleyway that contained the surface elevator. Aizawa was already there and was waiting with Nizu. Izuku rushed over and began touching the wall with his good hand. Aizawa. What's going on? Izuku. Can't talk here. We need to get in. Nizu then looked around and walked over to the wall. Nizu. Try here. Izuku turned to see him pointing at a part of the wall. He walked over and touched it, revealing the keypad he was looking for. He quickly typed in a code. Kirishima. Wo's secret entrance? To where? Izuku. The most technologically advanced facility in the world. The elevator arrived and opened. Izuku and Aizawa stepped in first, the others followed. It then closed and began its descent. Todoroki. What do you mean by the most technologically advanced? I thought Tartarus held that title. Izuku scoffed. Izuku. Tartarus wished they had anything near this. The tech there just barely scratches the surface of what Aperture has created. Nizu. Ah, so this is the fabled facility. The one you were held in for so many years? Izuku nodded. Izuku. One and the same. The elevator stopped and opened, revealing the chamber of GLaDOS' old body. Izuku quickly walked over to it. Aizawa. Izuku, doesn't that thing need an AI or something to pilot it? Izuku nodded. Izuku. Usually. But this facility was originally built to be run and controlled by humans. He reached up and pressed a button on the head. Across the chamber, a wall opened to reveal what looked to be a control room with a massive monitor on the other side. Izuku. And so was this body. Aizawa followed Izuku over to the room and watched as Izuku began typing on a keyboard. Aizawa. You still haven't told us why we're here. Izuku. I know. She will. The other walked over. Kirishima. But you said she's in danger, man. Izuku. I know, which is why we'll have to be fast. Nizu. Mr. Izuku, if I may ask, what's gotten you so riled up the GLaDOS can't take care of? Izuku turned and looked at the group before sighing. Izuku. I don't know much, but the Hero Public Safety Commission is after G. Whether that means eliminating her or making her their next Black Ops agent, I don't know. Todoroki. Wait, the HPSC has Black Ops agents? Izuku. They're an organization made to keep every pro-hero in Japan in check and are funded by the government. Of course they do. He finished typing and a low humming sound began to fill their ears. All but Izuku looked over to where the sound was coming from, which was the elevator. Now there was a blue energy in front of the doors. Izuku then pressed another button and the elevator went back up. The group then walked back to the main area and Izuku closed the control room. Aizawa. What is that? Izuku. The blue thing? Aizawa nodded. Izuku. That is the Aperture Science Material Emancipation Grill. It destroys any unauthorized Aperture technology, or with a few edits, government tracking devices. As he said that, the elevator began to come back down, and in it was GLaDOS in her hero costume. When the doors opened and she stepped through the grill, about 100 small devices stayed in the grill and disintegrated. GLaDOS. Good thinking with the grill zoo. Izuku. Thanks, now tell us what's going on. She nodded and went over to her old body. She took the cord on her wrist device and plugged it in, awakening the body. GLaDOS. I now have full control of the facility again. Activating turret assembly line. Izuku. Whoa. Why do we need the turrets? GLaDOS. Hopefully we won't, but I'm not taking chances. She turned to the group. GLaDOS. Listen up. The Hero Public Safety Commission is on their way. As soon as my trackers were destroyed, they sent a signal to the commission. She pressed a few buttons on her wrist device to replace a few wall panels with monitors, all showing camera feeds of the outside. The alley was surrounded by commission agents as well as a few heroes. GLaDOS. I don't know how, but the commission knew of the facility, knew of me, and unlike you all, deemed me too big of a threat to live. This facility, as well as the cities it's under, may become a war zone. I hope we can resolve this peacefully, but we must prepare for the worst. Izuku. Which would be? GLaDOS. The Commission's other mission here, getting their hands on Aperture Science and its technology. We cannot allow that, which is why I have taken measures to buy us time if things do get violent. But first, we need to fix that arm, Izuku. She tapped on her device a few more times and an elevator appeared. Izuku nodded and ran over to it. Izuku. I trust you, G. Do what you need. The elevator then descended. GLaDOS looked to the remaining group. GLaDOS. You don't need to stay. If you do and we survive, the Commission may hunt you down. Aizawa. I've seen this technology firsthand last time I was here. The Commission shouldn't get their hands on any of it. Nizu. I trust Eraser's judgment, I'm with you. Kirishima. It wouldn't be manly to leave friends in need. You can count on me. Todoroki. The old man wouldn't let the Commission kill me. I'll stay. GLaDOS. Then prepare for fight. An explosion was heard above. GLaDOS. 'Cause they're prepared for war. Aperture assault. GLaDOS. 'Cause they're prepared for war. Another explosion was heard, this one significantly closer. Aizawa turned to her. Aizawa. You're the boss here, what do we do? GLaDOS. Go deeper into the facility. Use the configuration process to hide your movements. Todoroki. Configuration process? GLaDOS. Yes. We'll see just how well the heroes can perform in completely untested tracks. She pressed a few more buttons on her device and 4 elevators appeared, one for each of them. GLaDOS. Take those elevators. They'll take you to different parts of the facility. If you follow the paths they leave you on, we'll all be able to meet up again. Go. The other 3 ran to their elevators while GLaDOS reached into her old body and ripped out a part. She quickly attached it to her wrist computer and ran to her elevator. As it descended, one last explosion went off which allowed heroes and soldiers alike to enter the chamber. As they did, the wall panels began to move and go out of sight, revealing a large testing chamber built around the main chamber. She and Hawks made eye contact just before her elevator completely disappeared from view. A soldier ran over to the number 3 hero. Soldier. Hawks, sir, did you see where they went? Hawks. They're deeper inside. He released a few feathers and tried to squeeze them through any gaps he could find. He had no such luck. Hawks. Looks like we're stuck here. He looked around and spied a button. Hawks. Unless. He walked over and pressed it, then next to him a cube fell. He then turned to the soldiers and heroes that followed him inside. Hawks, loudly. Listen, we have to solve these puzzles. Anyone here with a quirk that can help us get out, do it. Everyone else is to work on the puzzles. Everyone acknowledged his orders and began on their assignments. Suddenly a call came through on his comms. Hawks. Hello? Status report. Hawks. We're trapped in a test chamber. Most of the men are working on the puzzle. Others are attempting to break out. You can't break out of a chamber. It's made of blast-resistant materials and moon dust composites. You must complete it to gain access to the rest of the facility. Hawks. Understood, Madam President. The call cut out and Hawks went back to giving orders. He didn't know how his boss knew so much, but if she was right, then this was too dangerous to give up. GLaDOS stepped out of her elevator and into what looked to be an advanced operating room. On the table was Izuku was sitting up and moving his previously damaged arm. GLaDOS. All good? Izuku nodded and stood from the table. Izuku. Yeah, good as new. How's the situation up top? GLaDOS. I've trapped the Commission's heroes and soldiers in a large test chamber. It won't hold them for long. We need to go. Izuku nodded and followed her through a door. She tapped on her device a few times while walking through multiple hallways until they came to a large open area of the facility. Pieces of test chambers were flying back and forth on rails and hundreds of testing materials were zooming through the clear tubes that lined the facility. Izuku. What's all this? GLaDOS. At best, a way to buy time and eliminate a few of them. At worst, a simple waste of time. The large-scale reconfiguration should keep us from view for the time being. They came to a broken piece of walkway. GLaDOS lifted her hand and used her quirk on the nearby handrails to create a safe path to walk across, which they then did. Izuku. So, where are we going? GLaDOS. If all goes to plan, the first most secure area on Earth. Izuku. More secure than the facility? How? She smirked. GLaDOS. You'll see. They reached another elevator and began to descend when they noticed heroes begin to appear. GLaDOS. Shit! They got out faster than I thought. She quickly tapped her device and a nearby test chamber opened, revealing a wall of turrets, all fully operational. Turrets. Hi! Target acquired. Firing. The heroes quickly took cover, though a few weren't lucky enough to escape. Turrets. Target lost. Searching. Izuku looked to GLaDOS, who had a guilty look on her face. Izuku stepped forward, gripped her hand, and gave her a smile when she looked up. Izuku. It's okay. GLaDOS. I know. I just wish there was another way. I didn't want to kill again. Izuku. We will find another way then. One that will make it so no more bloodshed will have to happen. She gripped his hand and nodded. GLaDOS. Right. The elevator stopped, and they continued their journey forward. In a dark room, a woman was sat in front of a computer, the only light coming from the monitor. She let out a sigh, her anger at her subordinates' incompetence leaving in one large breath. She couldn't blame them, they didn't know what they were getting themselves into. Only she did, only she knew who was to blame. GLaDOS. She slammed her fist onto her desk, knocking over a picture frame. Quickly steadying herself, she carefully picked it up and setting it right. In the frame was a picture of a woman and a child. Both shared the green hair and eyes, but apart from that he resembled his father more. Soon, baby. Soon we'll be together again. She rubbed away a smudge on the glass near the boy's face. Soon, I promise. Old Aperture. Izuku and GLaDOS were running across a catwalk when red feathers were suddenly shot into the metal in front of them. Hawks then landed ahead of the two, raised his hand, and summoned one of his large sword feathers. Hawks. Izuku. Step away from her. It's her we want, not you. Izuku. No. I don't know how you know of her or the facility, but I can't let you complete your goals. The technology here is far more advanced than what we have already. If it gets out, it could cause an arms race of technology which could then lead to wars. Hawks. My mission isn't the tech. It's her life. As much as I wish I didn't have to do this, the blood spilled today leaves me no choice. He stepped back and readied his blade. GLaDOS. Trust me, Izuku. He nodded. Izuku. Always. The hero charged, but missed as GLaDOS used her quirk to disconnect the walkway and make her and Izuku fall. They landed on another walkway. GLaDOS, run. They quickly ran away from the hero, who didn't take long to shake his surprise. He quickly flew after them. Izuku. I could use some flat surfaces. GLaDOS. On it. She tapped on her device a few times. Izuku looked behind them to see Hawks quickly catching up. In response, he picked GLaDOS up and jumped over the railing, causing the hero to just barely miss them. GLaDOS. We should have some now. Below them, a test chamber opened. Izuku. Now we're talking. He quickly shot portals down, one next to the other, causing them to rocket back upwards and past the diving Hawks. They landed back on the other side of the catwalk GLaDOS broke before. They continued to run. Izuku. Where to now? GLaDOS. Take a right. He did as she said, and they found one last elevator that they then entered. As the doors closed, Hawks reappeared and only managed to hit the glass before it began its descent. GLaDOS. That was too close. Izuku. Yeah. Though I do wonder how they know of you. Could it be Wheatley? GLaDOS shook her head. GLaDOS. No. UA's had him ever since they found him. From what I could see, he's never left the building, and there's no way the Commission would trust an anonymous source like him. Izuku. But then, who could it be? No one else would be alive. GLaDOS. I don't know. We'll figure it out once we get out of here. Izuku. Right. A pair of arms were suddenly wrapped around him. He looked down to see it was GLaDOS. Izuku. Whoa, gee? What's wrong? GLaDOS. Nothing. I just need this. Just in case. He smiled and returned the hug. Izuku. Of course. The elevator opened and both Izuku and GLaDOS stepped out. GLaDOS led him forward and down some stairs. Then he noticed what looked to be many massive suspension springs that went on for miles. Izuku. Wow. What is this place? GLaDOS. It's the bottom of my section of Aperture. Izuku. Your section? Wait, you don't mean? GLaDOS. We're going down to Old Aperture. Izuku stopped her. Izuku. Are you sure? Just hearing Cave Johnson's voice sent you into a panic attack. We have no idea how your human transition affected the Caroline part of you. GLaDOS. I'm not sure, Izuku, but this is the only way we can buy time. Izuku. I trust you. Let's go. She nodded and made it over to a rusty metal elevator. They looked down and noticed the others were already down at the bottom of the chamber. A few explosions were heard above them. GLaDOS. They're getting closer. Izuku. Right. Hold on tight. He picked her up and jumped down, landing on his feet. Izuku. Thank you, long fall boots. He put her down. GLaDOS. Quick, to that control room, there's a button that'll seal us off. You can't miss it. Izuku looked up to see where she was pointing. Izuku. Right. He quickly shot a portal above it and entered. He hit the big red button he saw and watched as the pipes disconnected and the large door closed, preventing any heroes from getting to them. He jumped back down. Nizu. Well, now that we're down here, mind telling us where we are? GLaDOS. Of course. Welcome to Aperture Science Innovators, the world's leading pioneer in scientific discovery. Madam President. Kirishima. Whoa. So you mean there's a whole other facility, just sitting under yours? GLaDOS nodded. GLaDOS. Yes. Unfortunately, it was run by a man who took the trial and error part of science too far. Todoroki. What does that mean? GLaDOS. If you see a bug like man, steer clear. I know not all of them died. The group, minus Izuku, looked at her weird. GLaDOS. Praying mantis DNA does not make super soldiers. Aizawa. That doesn't help. It doesn't make any sense. GLaDOS. Good. Keep that mindset, it'll help you here. After all, Cave himself never made sense. Now let's move, we have somewhere to get to. She turned and walked out of the large chamber, followed quickly by the group. Izuku. Gee, where exactly are we going? GLaDOS. The old development wing made specifically for the portal technology. The only way out of here without going back up is to recover the prototypes and restore them. Nizu. How so? GLaDOS. You recall the discovery of a ship trapped in ice in the Arctic? The Borealis? Nisa nodded. GLaDOS. That's how. Aperture used a prototype teleportation device. However, they couldn't control where it went. After that, they changed directions to portals. Aizawa. But if we use it ourselves, won't we end up somewhere random too? GLaDOS wiggled her hand, signifying a maybe. GLaDOS. Only if I do something wrong. I'm going to track the portal energy Izuku's arms leak when in use. Those energy signatures will continue to rise the longer he is in one place, such as UA or Endeavor's agency. They will also be much more compatible with the machine than the natural radiation of the environment. Izuku. Oh, I get it. That's what the scientists got wrong. The weak natural radiation caused the teleportation to lock onto something else with a signature equal to it. Nizu. Which includes anything on Earth that gives off radiation, such as a frozen piece of bacteria. GLaDOS. Exactly. Though the chances of us getting sent somewhere frozen or inhospitable if I do mess up are low. It cannot send objects to places below the surface as the signal isn't strong enough to leave the underground and re-enter. That, and it was a 1 in a million chance that the signal locked on to that specific bacteria. Kirishima. You. What? Todoroki. I think she means that we won't get sent to the Arctic or some cave in the middle of nowhere. Kirishima. Ahoo. Okay, let's do it. GLaDOS. I'll be aiming for UA, but if the device locks onto the Endeavor agency signal, we should still be fine. Aizawa. And if it locks onto the inevitable energy signature here? GLaDOS. It won't. The only reason it would lock onto Endeavor agency is because of the similar levels. There's far too much portal energy here to trick the machine. Aizawa grunted an acknowledgement. Hawks knocked on a door. Come in. He opened the door and stepped into the dark room, the office of his boss, the president of the Hero Public Safety Commission. He couldn't see her face, though he could see the dark green hair that was draped over her shoulders. Madam President. Hawks. I expect good news. Hawks. I have some. But I also have some bad news. MP. Speak. Hawks. The target has trapped hers. MP. Itself. Hawks. Clear throat right, itself within what, by your description, would be the Old Aperture Science Innovators Facility. MP. That is good news. What's the bad? Hawks. He is with it. A green glow began to emit from what Hawks guessed was her face. 2 circles on her cheek as well as a familiar logo lit up in a bright green as she slammed her fists on her desk. Objects on her desk began to levitate, green wisps of energy propelling them upwards. She stood and opened her eyes, which were full of anger. The glow was now just bright enough for Hawks to see her angry face. MP yelling. You dare let him go with it? By me. MP yelling. You dare let that thing take my son deeper into that damned facility? Hawks backed up as pens and other items began to fly violently in his direction. Hawks. Ma'am, I apologize. They know that place better than us. There wa. He backed against the door and her monitor embedded itself within it next to his head. She walked towards him and lightly gripped his shoulder. MP. No more excuses. No more mistakes. You will get into Aperture Science Innovators even if you have to drop the entire surface facility on top of it. Aim. I clear? Hawks nodded furiously, brought his arm up to a salute. Hawks. Yes, ma'am. The woman let out a soft, yet threatening chuckle. MP. Good. Now go. The green energy appeared around him, and he was pushed down along with the door. He quickly got up and rushed out of the building. The president walked back to her desk and pressed a button on the intercom. MP. Josiah, I need a new door. Josiah. Right away, Ms. Midoriya. She sat back down behind her desk and sighed, turning off her glow. Ms. Midoriya. Soon, my Izuku. We will be together again soon, and you will have nothing left to fear. Escaped-ish. A sudden impact brought down a concrete wall. As the dust settled, Kirishima turned off his strength quirk, and the rest of the group followed him through the now destroyed wall, and into the hallway behind it. As the red sparks died down, he spoke up. Kirishima, you sure this is the right way? GLaDOS, it is. They kept walking down the hall, now seeing many doors leading to rooms with bulletproof windows looking inside next to them. It was clear there were once labels on the doors, though most of them had faded. A few still remained, however. GLaDOS, this was the isolation testing wing. These windows are one way and colored white, leaving whoever inside to believe they are alone. They passed by a door labeled Combustible Lemon, that GLaDOS deliberately looked away from, because of both its origin and the stained red walls within. There were even black handprints left by flaming subjects as they died. GLaDOS, some were more gruesome as others. When not being used for isolated tests, they were used for tests that needed to be contained, such as hold on. She looked through a window into a room which only held a table. Izuku, what's wrong? GLaDOS, the selective levitation emitter is missing. Todoroki, what did it do? GLaDOS, it was a device that could use energy to lift things into the air. It could make anything fly around the room. We actually used a few concepts from it when creating the anti-gravity technology we used in our portal guns. Aizawa, is it possible it was merely moved during your outburst? GLaDOS, maybe. But even then there were barely any employees down here. Nizu, as much as this is interesting, I suggest we keep moving. GLaDOS, right. We're almost there. Just a few more wings to go. Oh, and I'd keep my eyes open in the quantum testing wing if I were you. We may not have accomplished much, but the quantum lock scientists may not appreciate us being there. Ms. Midoriya awoke. She had fallen asleep on her desk and it was now morning. She looked up and noticed a brand new door where the old one was and a new monitor sitting on her desk, waiting to be plugged in. Ms. Midoriya, at least some people know how to do their jobs. Damn overgrown turkey. She looked at her reflection on the inactive monitor and traced the lines on her face. Her finger eventually landed on one of the dull green circles on her face before her eyes landed on the Aperture logo on her left cheek. She looked at a picture on her desk of her and a black-haired man and sighed. Ms. Midoriya, we had a good run, Hisashi. If only that old maniac didn't leave everything to that loyal dog he called assistant. She chuckled and looked to another picture, one with her, the man, Cave Johnson, Caroline, and several other scientists. Ms. Midoriya, you almost had us fooled, Caroline. But you couldn't keep your true nature hidden forever. You thought we wouldn't notice, but you were just like him. She put down the previous picture and picked up the group photo. Ms. Midoriya, just how many of these smiles are true? She scanned the photo in faux interest. Ms. Midoriya, only two. Jeremy, the poor man, I wish Cave let us focus on cancer just for his boy. Gwendolyn, the damn fool, got herself stuck with military testing. No one but her could stand the general. Cave, racked with lunar poisoning, and Carloan being forced to take over. The only two happy here were you and me, Hisashi. She pressed her finger to the stomach of her picture self and smiled. Ms. Midoriya, all because of you, Izuku. She activated her enhancements once more and used it to take the picture from her hand and set it back down in its place. Ms. Midoriya, I will reclaim our happiness, Hisashi. The group stood in a large room with a machine in the center. It looked as big as very early computers had been, but knowing Aperture, the size just meant it was built to work until they could streamline it. GLaDOS walked put from around it, wiping her hands. GLaDOS, I've fixed it, but this is a one-time use type patch. One use, and this entire machine is fried. Kirishima, it's not like it'll take more than one use anyway. Right? GLaDOS, right. Now gather around, I'll program the energy lock now. The other four surrounded her as she leaned down and typed on the keyboard of the machine. After a couple seconds, she stood straight once more. She turned to face the others. GLaDOS, all right. You all ready? They all nodded. Izuku put a hand in her shoulder. Izuku, get us out of here, G. She smiled and nodded. He removed his hand as she turned back to the machine. GLaDOS, 3, 2, 1. She pressed the button and a light blue energy surrounded them all, minus Izuku, who was surrounded by a bright green. Izuku. Gee? What's going on? GLaDOS looked at him and looked back to the screen. GLaDOS. It looks like there's another aperture signal. It must be syncing with your arms. Izuku. Where is it? Nizu looked at the screen, but it glitched before he could get a good look. Nizu. I can't tell. GLaDOS. I can't turn it off. A hand turned her around, revealing it to be Izuku. Izuku. It's better me than you. You're their target. Just be safe, okay? GLaDOS nodded and hugged him. GLaDOS. You too. They separated. GLaDOS. We'll come for you if you don't turn up in a day, you got that? Izuku nodded. Izuku. Good luck. The others nodded. Then suddenly, the energy surrounding each person became brighter and brighter before it completely engulfed them. Then they were gone. Izuku opened his eyes as the light died down. Faced a brown door in what looked to be an office. He heard something fall behind him and a voice. Ms. Midoriya. Izuku? Who are you? Ms. Midoriya. Izuku? That voice. There wasn't anyone he knew who sounded like that, yet he swore he could recognize it, but he couldn't place his finger where. Its tone, the weight of his name, it was like it was ingrained into his head. Who was this person? He began to turn around slowly. As he did, he was able to take in the look of the office. Multiple bookshelves, filled to the brim with physics books, hero law codes, and several other professional books one could find in any office. The floor, while it looked to have been cleaned recently, was covered in ink stains from what had to have been thrown pens. Then his eyes landed on the logo on the only blank part of the wall he had seen. It was the symbol of the Hero Public Safety Commission, and he had just landed in the president's office. He continued to turn, not paying attention to any other decor in the room. Why was he here? How did the president of the HPSC have aperture technology? Who were they? He soon got his answer as he finished turning around and peered into a set of eyes which sported the exact shade of green his did. There were many more similarities that Izuku could spot. Though it made sense, he was staring at his mother's face after all. The only difference he could see between back in the past and now were the lines on her face and the aperture logo on her cheek, both similar to the ones on his arms. But Izuku. This is impossible. My mother escaped the facility. GLaDOS told me as much, and I know she wouldn't lie to me about this. So who are you? Ms. Midoriya. Izuku? What are you talking about? It's me. Ms. Midoriya took a step forward. In response, Izuku activated his enhancements. The lines on his arms glowing their respective colors, he raised them up and aimed them at her. Izuku yelling. Not a step closer. I know what portals do to humans, and I know you do too. Tell me why you're using my mom's face before I make you pay for it. Ms. Midoriya. But I'm not using a face, it's mine. I am your mother. Izuku. Bullshit. She escaped the day GLaDOS sealed Aperture off. That was 3 centuries ago. It's impossible for her to be alive. Her face hardened into a bitter frown. Ms. Midoriya. Well then. If you won't just listen to me, I'll make you. Her eyes, Aperture logo, and 2 circles began to glow a bright green. Suddenly his arms were surrounded in energy of the same color, and wisps of it were lifting items from around the room. Ms. Midoriya. I was a scientist. Top of the line, the best Aperture had. If you believe I don't know how to preserve myself, then you're wrong, my dear. I was also the one who created the earliest prototypes of Project Deku's cybernetics, so you best believe I kept working. Izuku. Why can't my arms move? Ms. Midoriya. Do you like it? An upgraded version of the selective levitation emitter merged with my cybernetic technology creates near-perfect telekinesis. I don't need any silly hand movements or worry about getting a fever unlike with Quirks. The only weakness? She pointed to the Aperture logo on her cheek. Ms. Midoriya. The power conductor chip. All Aperture technologies have them. They don't work without them. The same could be said for your arms there, Izuku. The green energy around his arms disappeared. Ms. Midoriya. But I won't take them. I don't feel like depriving my son of his arms. unlike a certain mechanical monstrosity. She laid the other item she picked up back down and walked towards Izuku. She reached him, placed a hand on his shoulder, and smiled. Ms. Midoriya. I'm so thankful you get teleported here, Izuku. Now we can finally be. Izuku mumbled something. Ms. Midoriya couldn't quite hear him. She put her finger under his chin and lifted his head to look at her. Ms. Midoriya. Speak up, dear. It's rude to mumble. Izuku. I said take it back. Ms. Midoriya. Take what back? That GLaDOS is a mechanical monstrosity. Well, she is. Frankly, I'm surprised you don't think so considering everything she's done. Izuku yelling. And what if she's changed? Ms. Midoriya began to back up as Izuku stepped towards her. Ms. Midoriya, yelling. She hasn't, she can't change, she's a machine. Izuku yelling. No, she's not, she's a human being stuffed into a jumble of code and snipped away at until she became the perfect science machine. I don't know what you think she is, but she's far from the person who blindly followed Cave Johnson. From what I see, she has more humanity in her than you. This left Ms. Midoriya stunned. Izuku. You aren't my mother. It may be the same body, but my mother was always willing to give people second chances. She always helped others even if it led to her detriment. The Inko Midoriya I know and love is the kind of person I aspire to be. I know GLaDOS did terrible things, but even she deserves a second chance. I gave one to her, and she became someone worthy to become a hero as well as someone I love and trust. Next time, before you resort to blowing up giant facilities underneath cities, think about whether or not the ones you love would be proud of you. He walked over to a window and opened it. Izuku. Until next time, Madam President. Izuku portaled out of the building, leaving Ms. Midoriya alone to contemplate his words. The arms. Welcome to Aperture Science's R&D division. Today we will be showcasing our first ever cybernetic enhancement. We would like to present the Aperture Science Portal Technology ARM-based cybernetic implants. We have placed our signature portal technology into these perfectly functional arms. They retain full maneuverability while also having the full capabilities of our handheld portal devices. All it takes to power these is your natural electric pulses and our signature power conductor chip. The operation is relatively painless, and we even let subjects that survive keep them after testing. Okay-ish. It was nigh as Izuku popped out of a portal in an alleyway next to a familiar building. He closed the portals, made his way to the entrance of the alley, and looked around to make sure no one saw him. Seeing no one, he turned the corner and entered the building, ensuring to be fast. As he entered the main lobby, he took in a breath. Izuku. Ah, home sweet home. Just hope Ashido is awake. He walked up to the elevator and pressed the call button. The elevator appeared in just a few seconds, so he stepped inside and pressed the button for the floor the apartment was on. Half a minute later and the doors opened again, letting him get off. Wanting to get home and see GLaDOS and make sure she was okay, he ran down the hall. He reached the door in seconds and went for the knob just to find it locked. He raised his fist to knock, and as he swung his arm, the door opened. Ashido was confused. The internships had ended, yet they had to stay home as Nizu was away. Then GLaDOS burst through the door early in the morning, a worried expression on her face, and now she was pacing back and forth. No information of the situation had left the artificial human's lips. Weirdest of all, Izuku wasn't back yet. Even with the distance of Endeavor's agency, he should have been back just a couple hours after GLaDOS. What happened? Suddenly, the doorknob jiggled. A look of hopefulness took over GLaDOS' face as she rushed to the door. As she opened it, a familiar face fell into her, carried by the force he was about to knock with. Izuku was alive and well. GLaDOS, Izuku. She wrapped her arms around him. GLaDOS. You're okay. The boy smiled and returned the hug. Izuku. Yes. Yes, I am, G. Ashido walked over and quietly closed the door. She then walked over to them, watching them seemingly try to merge due to how hard they were hugging. After a few seconds, she spoke up. Ashido. I know you just got back, but what happened? The two looked to her and saw worry in her eyes. As far as they considered, she was their best friend and they were probably hers. Seeing the both of them come home tired, dirty, and holding onto each other as hard as they did must be worrying. They let go of the hug and turned to her. GLaDOS. A lot, Ashido. A lot. Izuku. More than G knows. GLaDOS glanced at him. That was right, anything could have happened when they were separated. Ashido. Well, let's sit down, and you two can tell me everything. Izuku nodded. Izuku. Yeah, let's. Over the course of a few hours, Izuku and GLaDOS explained what they knew about what happened. Their pink-skinned friend listened intently, soaking in the information. When they finished, she sat there, quietly, processing what they told her. After several seconds, she spoke up. Ashido. You two are so strong and cool for being able to get through that. Kirishima and Todoroki too. You four, Mr. Aizawa, and Niza all avoided a small army of heroes and safety commission soldiers. I just wish I could have helped. GLaDOS shook her head. GLaDOS. Even if you were there wasn't much to do other than run. I do wish we knew who ordered the attack though. Izuku. It was the president of the safety commission. The two girls looked at him with confused looks, but GLaDOS quickly turned to realization. GLaDOS. You were teleported to the main offices. Izuku nodded. Izuku. Not just the main office, the office of the president. And I know who she is. Ashido leaned in closer. Ashido. Who? Izuku looked down and gripped his dirty and torn pants. GLaDOS watched as a small tear left his eye. Izuku. Her name is Inko Midoriya. She was my mother. At the reference of the name, GLaDOS gained a look of shock. GLaDOS. Inko Midoriya? But I swear I. Izuku. I know. I know what you saw, I saw the footage too. But it's her. But it's also not. She said she created the earliest Project Deku prototypes and she told me about the power conductor chips. GLaDOS stayed quiet. GLaDOS. But how? Izuku chuckled sadly before looking at his girlfriend. Izuku. She's an aperture scientist. What did you expect? GLaDOS. Right, hey Izuku? What do you mean she's not her? Izuku took a deep breath. Izuku. She's different. My mom was kind, compassionate. She wouldn't think twice about helping others at her own expense. But the version I met was willing to drop a city on the facility to get me back despite the loss of civilian life. That's not my mother, but a monster wearing her shell. As he finished talking, tears began to flow from his eyes as the feelings he'd been bottling since he left his mother's office began to flood his brain. GLaDOS pulled him into a hug as he cried, a pained look on her face. She pulled back and looked him in the eyes. GLaDOS. Izuku. I swear we'll get her back. I promise you that you, and your mother will be able to sit and laugh together with no hate or animosity between us. Izuku nodded. Izuku. I'd like that. She smiled lightly and pulled him back into the hug. There on the couch is where they fell asleep, holding each other. As long as they had each other, they'd be okay. Christmas special. It was a cold December morning. Snow was gently falling outside the windows and Class 1A were buzzing with joy and excitement, all but two. Sound asleep in Izuku's dorm room were GLaDOS and Izuku himself. As a sunbeam fell onto Izuku's face, he stirred and opened his eyes. Looking down, he noticed GLaDOS with her head on his chest and her legs dangling off the edge of the bed. Her height wasn't the best when paired with his bed. Smiling, he sat up and shook her lightly. Izuku. Gee, wake up. Groaning from being tired, she opened her eyes and propped herself up. GLaDOS. Izuku? Yon, what is it? Izuku. It's Christmas morning. Her eyes opened wide with energy. She quickly stood up from the bed and gestured towards a closet with her hand. GLaDOS. Then let's get going. Using her quirk, she dragged out a set of clothes she kept in Izuku's room that were hung on metal hangers. She got another set out for Izuku, and the two quickly got dressed. Once they were dressed, they made their way down to the common space to find the rest of the class sitting at the tables, eating breakfast. They quickly joined them and enjoyed a breakfast of bacon, eggs, sausages, pancakes, and toast. Once breakfast was over, the class hung out for a few hours, waiting for Aizawa, who hadn't shown up yet, as he said he had a surprise for them. Soon the front doors opened to reveal Aizawa walking in with Eri, who was dressed in a Santa suit. She brought out items from different holidays she had confused with Christmas. After that, the class decided to out on some outfits of their own, coming back in a mix of red and green Santa-like outfits. Once the class was ready, they and Eri sat around the Christmas tree for the random gift exchange. Zero attached tape to each present and handed a piece to each student, including Eri. Zero. Alright guys, on 1, 3, 2, 1. All at the same time, the class pulled on their tape, causing their presents to come flying at them. As they caught them, they tore open the wrapping paper. Izuku got a rabbit plush Dakota bought, GLaDOS got a punching bag from Kirishima, and Eri got a pair of long fall boots that Izuku had GLaDOS make. Clearly some adjustments would have to be made. After they opened their gifts, the class immediately started working on a large dinner. It took a few hours to complete, but once it was done, they ate. It was the missed amount of food any of them, minus Yayorozu, had ever seen at once. Over the next hour, the class ate most of the food, with a small portion of it being kept as leftovers. After dinner, the class relaxed, sinking into the cushions of the furniture. As they chatted amongst themselves, it quickly grew dark out as the sun slowly went down. Soon, it was pitch black outside and the students began to go up to their rooms to get a good night's rest. Izuku and GLaDOS were the last two to leave the common space, but before they could reach the stairs, the front doors swung open, to reveal Inko Midoriya and 2 bodyguards. She locked eyes with Izuku and quickly approached him. Izuku. Madam President. To what do I owe the pleasure? She sighed, giving GLaDOS a glance full of disdain, but turned her attention back to Izuku. Inko. I have simply come to give you something. Her cybernetics turned on, giving off that familiar green glow. A wrapped box, being carried by her telekinetic energy wisps, floated over and landed in her hand. She then extended it to Izuku, who took it. Inko. Open it. Izuku did as she said, revealing the contents to be a stuffed animal, a horse to be more precise, and a framed picture of Izuku, Inko, and his father Hasashi. Inko. Since you seem so keen on our past rather than our present and future, I figured you would like those. Have a Merry Christmas, my son. With that said, she turned around and left, followed by her bodyguards. GLaDOS noticed tears falling from Izuku's face. GLaDOS. Izuku, are you okay? He nodded and wiped them away. Izuku. Yeah, it's just. The last time I saw this was the day me and Mom left for Bring Your Child to Work Day. GLaDOS hugged him. GLaDOS. Well, let's find a good place for both of these in your room. Yeah? Izuku nodded and they went up to Izuku's room, one last present in hand. Getting to camp. It had been a couple weeks since the invasion of Aperture Science. It seemed that Ms. Midoriya had slunk back into the shadows to wait for another chance rather than actively hunt down the group. Peculiarly, Hawks had disappeared from public view for a week. Izuku and GLaDOS had a feeling they knew why. Him letting the group slip between his fingers was bound to anger the woman more than GLaDOS making the teleport machine. The day after, when classes started back up, Izuku had brought what he knew to Aizawa and Nizu, both of which were equally surprised and not shocked. If she really was alive for those 3 centuries, the smartest thing she could have done was make her way to the top of the most influential organization in the country. Due to the event and the level of quick thinking and quirk usage the 4 students had made, Izuku, GLaDOS, Kirishima, and Todoroki were all exempt from the practical portion of the final exam. They still had to take the written portion though, but the 4 passed that easily. It wasn't until after the exam that they found out that they had to either fight or escape the teachers who all had extra weights as a handicap. Now, the while class was sitting on a bus miles away from the city. Instead of an ordinary summer vacation, they would be attending a secluded training camp. Izuku was gazing out the window, remembering something the GLaDOS had wanted to show him and the others the day before the trip. Izuku walked into the support lab to see Ashido, Todoroki, Kirishima, Nizu, and Aizawa surrounding GLaDOS, who was sitting at a workbench. He walked over to them. Izuku. Gee, we're all here. What was it you wanted to show us? She turned around and raised the pair of giggles she was wearing to her forehead. GLaDOS. Something amazing. Come here. Izuku stepped closer and peered around her to see 8 objects. 7 seemed to be bracelets of some kind and the other was a cylinder. She turned back around to present them. GLaDOS. As you all may recall, I was able to create a one-time teleporter back in Aperture. Izuku. Yeah. It was based off what you already made for me back during the internships. GLaDOS nodded. GLaDOS. Right. But those work off of large amounts of residual energy, not active sources. She gestured to the cylinder. GLaDOS. This here is what I like to call the Aperture Science Teleportation Anchor, or ASTA for short. It constantly radiates the energy signature any of Aperture's more advanced technologies give off. Once it's powered, of course. Now that Izuku looked at it closer, he could tell it had that classic Aperture white and the shell texture. She then gestured to the bracelets. GLaDOS. These are the Aperture Science Teleportation Beacons. They keep track of both your location and that of the anchor. Unfortunately, they do have a range, and a rather small one at that. If you leave the city, then the beacons cannot pick up the anchor's signal from here. Aizawa. Why not? GLaDOS. There's quite a few reasons, but the main one is their sizes. With such small beacons, they can only transmit so far. Nizu picked up one of the bracelets. Nizu. Still, these are revolutionary. Izuku looked at his wrist to see his own beacon. They may not work outside the city, but it was better than nothing. He leaned away from the window and looked to GLaDOS, who was sleeping peacefully next to him. He wondered how it felt for her to feel sleep for the first time. There was a lot of things she hadn't experienced until given her body. Her body, yes, it was her body. Not a body she was forced into, not one she had no say in. She made this body to suit her, to look how she wanted to. He looked her over. Her skin was a pale white along with her hair. Originally he had thought that was because the body was new and not used to life yet, though he knew that's how she saw herself. Her eyes were a bright yellow as well. In the end, she still held on to her original mechanical body. She wasn't Caroline after all, she was a mash-up of the woman and the code she was introduced to. The bus they were riding in pulled onto the side of the road and Aizawa stood up. Aizawa. All right, everyone off the bus. Several students were shaken by their classmates to wake them up as the class got off the bus. As the last student got off, a black car pulled up in front of the bus. Aizawa walked over to it as the doors opened and 3 people stepped out. 2 women in cat-like outfits, one blue, one red, and a kid with a hat on. Red. Lock on with these sparkling gazes. Blue. Stingingly cute and cat-like. The two that struck a pose together. Both. The wild hussy cats. GLaDOS. I researched them back before I got my body. These are Mandalay and Pixie Bob of the wild hussy cats. They're a 4-person rescue team that's been in action for almost 12 years. A paw-like glove with claws was immediately pressed onto her face. The culprit was an angry-looking Pixie Bob. Pixie Bob. I'm 18 at heart. Respect your elders. GLaDOS, muffled. I could say the same to you. The glove was removed. Pixie Bob. What? Aizawa. Don't ask. It's complicated. The one known as Mandalay spoke up. Mandalay. Hello students of Class 1A, I'm Mandalay, and I'd like to welcome you all to the training camp. See all this forest past this cliff? The class nodded. Mandalay. That's our property, which means you can use your quirk everywhere. Now, if you look in the distance over there. She pointed out towards the forest to a building the class could barely see. Mandalay. That is the camp. It should take you around 2.5 hours to get there. Pixie Bob. Any longer and you kittens don't get any lunch. Ashido. Huh? What do they mean by that? Kirishima, yelling. Get back on the bus. The class turned around to run to the bus, but Pixie Bob cut them off and touched the ground. Pixie Bob. See you in a couple hours. The ground around them surged and flowed towards them, making a wave of dirt. They were flung from the cliff and down into the forest. Mandalay yelling, "Beware of the beasts, they're not exactly friendly." The class stood up and faced the forest. Their journey to camp had just begun. First night. Aizawa pulled the bus into the driveway of the Hussycat agency before parking it and getting out. As he stepped off the bus, he noticed a child in a red hat he had been told was named Kodago inside almost immediately. Mandalay and Pixie Bob both watched as the kids slammed the door. Aizawa walked up to the two. "Aizawa, I almost feel bad for him, having to be near two whole classes of people he hates." Mandalay sighed and the two cat-themed heroes turned to face him. Mandalay, "Yeah. I'm hoping this whole thing will get him to open up a little. I worry, I really do, especially with villain attacks on the rise." Pixie Bob, "Right. I still can't believe it's bad enough that we have to do this camp. Are you sure they can't wait until next year?" Aizawa shook his head. "Aizawa, Class A has proven time and time again that they would run headfirst into danger to save people, even if they have to break the law to do it. They need their licenses before any of them get involved with something too big to get people to look the other way." His heroic peers both looked on the direction on the class. Pixie Bob, "They're moving too slow to make it by lunch, but they're also taking down my beasts like they're nothing but obstacles. 6 of them especially." Aizawa raised an eyebrow. Aizawa, "Which ones?" Pixie Bob, "From what I remember from the roster UA sent, it's Kirishima, Bakugo, Ida, Todoroki, GLaDOS, and Izuku? Do those 2 really not have any other names?" Aizawa, "Like I said, it's complicated. They've been through a lot." Mandalay, "Eraser, what exactly does that mean? I'd say your entire class has already gone through a lot." Aizawa, "It's not my place to tell anyone. Just know, those 2 are the ones who need this training the least. They have more experience than you could imagine." He then walked past them and into the building, presumably to find a place to sleep until 1A got there. Several hours later, Aizawa, Mandalay, Pixie Bob, and Koda were standing outside, watching the tree line as Class 1As slowly appeared, stumbling and limping out of the woods. As they approached, Ashido spoke up. Ashido, yelling, "You thought that would take us 2 hours?" Mandalay chuckled. Mandalay, "Sorry about that. We based the time off of how long we would take." Zero, "Oh yeah, just rub it in how good you are, why don't ya?" Pixie Bob, "But you still did really good, especially you 6. She pointed at the group she named earlier: Bakugo, Izuku, Kirishima, GLaDOS, Todoroki, and Ida. She then charged at them and began to run circles around them, going on about how strong they are. Izuku and GLaDOS are able to squeeze out of her grasp and walk away, leaving the other 4. After a few seconds, Aizawa got her away from them and Mandalay continued to talk. Mandalay, "While you're here, we'll be training you all to improve your quirks and how you use them. You will also have access to the hot springs we have here to relax, especially after your workouts. Your bags have already been put in your rooms. Now let's get you all inside and get some food in you." She led the class into the main building, revealing a cafeteria with a lot of delicious-smelling food in the tables. Excited, the class all rushed to find their seats and began to eat. GLaDOS, "I'm so glad I have an actual nose and mouth." Izuku, "I know." The class continued to scarf down their food faster than the Hussycats anticipated. Pixie Bob, "Slow down, there's plenty to go around." Mandalay, "Let them eat. It'll be their only opportunity to eat food like this all week." After half an hour, despite their efforts to eat more, the students had managed to eat their fill of food. After they ate their dinner, Class 1A made their way to the hot springs, except for 2 students. As she was cleaning the tables, Mandalay noticed Izuku and GLaDOS begin to walk towards the doors outside. She walked over to them. Mandalay, "Do you 2 not want to enjoy the hot springs?" Izuku, "It's not that. We just need some fresh air." Mandalay looked between them. Mandalay, "All right, but you should be inside by 10. GLaDOS, "Yes, ma'am." She let them leave the building. They stepped out and began to walk towards a trail opening they saw. As they began to walk, Izuku began to inspect his arms. GLaDOS. Are your arms okay? Izuku. I think so. But there's no way punching dirt monsters all day did nothing. I'm not risking getting them wet until we can get them checked. GLaDOS sighed. GLaDOS. What I would give to have the tools to do it now. Izuku. Yeah. What about you, G? Why didn't you get in the water? GLaDOS went quiet for a few moments. GLaDOS. I don't want anyone to see me naked. It's embarrassing and awkward to me. Izuku. That's fine. To be honest, the scars that these arms caused are pretty embarrassing for me. Even if my arms were at 100%, I probably would have still worn a shirt. GLaDOS. Really? I thought they looked fine. Izuku. When did you see them? GLaDOS gave him a confused look. GLaDOS. I've only been able to actually sleep for a month and a half. I studied you when I was in the backpack. Izuku. Oh, I didn't know that. Well, just so you know, you look good to me no matter what you wear. She smiled. GLaDOS. Thank you, Izuku. He hugged her. Izuku. No need, G, it's the truth. They looked at each other and shared a kiss. GLaDOS. We should probably start heading back. Izuku let go of the hug. Izuku. Oh, right. Wouldn't want Mr. Aizawa coming after us. They both laughed and began to head back, not prepared for the training they'd face in the morning. Training camp. It was early the next morning and Class 1A were all standing outside in a large clearing. Aizawa stood in front of them, silently enjoying the tired looks on their faces. GLaDOS. Yawn, I did not miss this feeling. Aizawa stepped forward. Aizawa. Look, I know you're all tired, but we're not here to relax. We are here to train, to get you all ahead of regular first years. Bakugo, come here. Bakugo, too tired to actually complain, walked over as Aizawa pulled out a softball and handed it to him. Aizawa. Just like the test I gave you in the beginning of the year. Throw it with your quirk as hard as possible. The prospect of showing off just how much he'd grown, Bakugo perked up and hopped into position. Bakugo. Ha, just watch this, I'll leave you all speechless with my power. He wound his arm back before throwing the ball, using his strongest explosion to launch it. Bakugo, yelling, die. The class watched as the ball flew far into the air. Bakugo turned to Aizawa. Bakugo. Well? Let's see the score. Aizawa digheyed and lifted up his phone, showing a distance of 709.3 meters, merely 4 more than his original score. This shocked him and the class. Bakugo, yelling. What? How? Aizawa was about to speak up when he was interrupted. GLaDOS. If I may, sir? He nodded. GLaDOS. As much as we've all been through, all of your growth has been mental. Everyone here is stronger in a fight, that's only because you all don't hesitate to take action and know how to use your quirks better. However, your quirks themselves haven't gotten stronger at all. Aizawa. Exactly, and that's why we're here. Trouble seems to find you. This training camp was put together to counteract this by making you all stronger, quirks, minds, and bodies. The wild Hussycats will be your trainers, putting each of you through personalized training regimens to maximize your quirks. Izuku raised his hand. Aizawa. Yes, Midoriya? Izuku. Mr. Aizawa, what exactly will I be doing? Cybernetics don't exactly get stronger with use. Aizawa. Don't worry about that, Pixie Bob had an idea. Now go to the training field and get started. The entire class quickly did as they were told. Class 1B was being led through the woods by their homeroom teacher, Vlad King. Monoma. Mr. Vlad, why are we even here? Vlad. To strengthen your quirks. Kendo. How? Vlad. Think of quirks like muscles. If you overwork your muscles, they tear and come back tougher. That is what we're going to accomplish here. You're going to tear your quirks apart and build them up better than ever. Tokage. But why so early? Vlad. Because we can't afford to be left behind. 1A has already been training for hours. He pushed one last group of branches out of the way to show his class the large training area, as well as 1A. Sabiraba. There's no way this is training. Kamakiri. Training? This looks like torture. They took in how 1A was training. Kaminari was generating and absorbing large amounts of electricity while holding both ends of a generator. Bakugo was shoving his hands into boiling water and making giant explosions before dunking his hands again. Todoroki was doing a similar exercise as Bakugo as he was sitting in a metal drum while cooling and then heating up the water, using both of his sides to their extremes. 1B jumped back as Izuku landed on his back in front of them, a staff in his hands. Izuku. Oh, hi, I can't talk long, but good luck with your training. GLaDOS yelling. Izuku, pay attention. Izuku picked his head up and looked where he had been thrown from. 1B followed his gaze to find a large dirt monster charging right at them. Izuku right. He quickly stood, spun around to gain momentum, and swung his staff into the monster, knocking off most of its face and making it retreat. Izuku looked back at 1B. Izuku. Seriously, good luck. With that said, he ran back to his training. Pixie Bob had him and GLaDOS fighting her dirt monsters. Since Izuku couldn't improve his power without physical upgrades, it was decided he would practice fighting. GLaDOS, on the other hand, could improve her power since it was a quirk. She was training to increase her control of metal and how much force she could make the metal she controls exert. Vlad. Now let's get started. The two classes, thoroughly exhausted, were gathered outside near the agency, standing next to multiple picnic tables. Behind them was a small pavilion with multiple brick stoves underneath it. Then Ragdoll and Pixie Bob of the Hussycats appeared and placed two large boxes on one of the tables. Pixie Bob. Like we said yesterday, that was the only time we would be feeding you while you're here. All your meals will be made yourselves the rest of the time you're here. Ragdoll. So don't just go and make some crummy cat food, you'll want something you can stomach to make it through the camp. Pixie Bob. Tonight you're making curry. All the ingredients you need are in these boxes. We'll watch you just in case something happens while you're cooking, but we won't help with the cooking itself, good luck. Both classes grabbed a box each and started to cook their food, though Izuku was sitting at one of the tables, watching. Ragdoll walked over and leaned over the table. Ragdoll. Midoriya, why aren't you helping? Izuku lifted his arms. Izuku. My arms. It's been a while since G's been able to check them out, so I don't want to risk them being near fire. The yellow hussy cat looked at Izuku confused. Ragdoll. What does that mean? Pixie Bob stepped over. Pixie Bob. Right, I forgot to tell you and Tiger. Midoriya here has prosthetic arms. You can't really tell right now cause they're dirty, but you can see the joints. Izuku lifted up his arm to show Ragdoll. Izuku. Yeah. They're what make the portals I shoot. Ragdoll. Really? Who made them? She was then yanked away by Pixie Bob. Pixie Bob. Let him relax. He won't get much time to do so the rest of the time he's here. Izuku chuckled as they went around the corner. After a few more minutes, the curry was done and both classes began to eat. Izuku noticed Kirishima go into the woods but decided to let him be and continued to eat. After they were done, the classes went into their cabins, although the remedial students who failed their finals had to join Aizawa for several more hours of work. After a while, everyone was asleep and ready for more training the next day. Attacked. It had been 2 days since both classes started training together. Each day pushed them to train until they fell to the ground in exhaustion, and made them keep going after that. Both classes were gathered together late on their 3rd day after dinner by the Hussycats for an announcement. The sun was going down, and all the students looked like they were about to pass out. Mandalay. We've been watching you all train over the week and we've decided that you all deserve a small treat. Ragdoll. Yeah, you'll be doing a classic test of courage. Your screams will fill our forest like kittens looking for mama. Both classes suddenly became full of energy as they heard of the activity. Ashido. Woo, normal camp stuff. She didn't get long to celebrate before Aizawa's capture tool wrapped around her along with Uraraka, Aoyama, Ida, and Sato. Aizawa's. Those of you who failed the practical final will be coming with me for extra lessons. You didn't look plus ultra enough in today's training. He began to drag them away. Ashido. No, Izuku, GLaDOS, save me! The two just watched as she and the others were dragged too far away to hear. Mandalay then cleared her throat. Mandalay. Each class will take turns being the scarers and the scares. You will be going in pairs, and at the halfway point Ragdoll will give you each a tag with your name on it as proof that you didn't just cut through the forest. Understood? Both classes collectively agreed. Mandalay. Good. Class B will be the scarers first, and A will be the victims. Now get going and set up while Class A gets their partners. Ragdoll and Class B then left and entered the forest as Mandalay pulled out strips of paper with names on them. Mandalay. Alright, come get a paper. If you pick your own name, you need to pick another. The remaining members of Class 1A stepped forward and did as they were told. Izuku looked at his to find he was partnered with Bakugo, who just grunted as he approached Izuku. Izuku. Excited? Bakugo. Maybe. But if they can't scare us, it'll just be disappointing. Izuku. Yeah, we'll see what happens. He and Bakugo then began to wait. GLaDOS. Well, that's unfortunate. Izuku looked over to her. Izuku. What is it? She showed him the paper which had her own name on it. GLaDOS. There isn't any more. I'm by myself. Izuku. Oh. Too bad, we can switch. She shrugged. GLaDOS. I'll be fine. Before they could keep talking, Mandalay spoke up. Mandalay. Alright, we're starting now. Izuku and Bakugo were the third pair to go and were a third of through the trail. Bakugo. Damn it, these guys could at least pretend to be scary. Izuku chuckled. Izuku. Yeah. Though I suppose a child might be spooked. That got Bakugo to laugh. Bakugo. For a lab rat, you're pretty lax. Izuku. It's probably because of the experiments. He tapped his forehead. Izuku. Made me pretty adaptive. He out his arm down, though both he and Bakugo heard pops and cracks as he did so. Bakugo. Arm trouble? Izuku sighed. Izuku. Yeah, back at USJ was able to do repairs. What I would give for a lab right now. They rounded a corner and came across Ragdoll in her stand. She leaned forward and waved them over. Ragdoll. Over here, kittens. They approached the stand as she handed them their tags. Ragdoll. Having fun? Scared? Bakugo. If your version of fun and fear is cheap jump scares, then yeah. Izuku laughed as she pouted. It was then he caught a whiff of an odd smell. Izuku. Does the air smell odd to yo? It was then he saw it, a hulking mint green figure rushing at them from the woods behind Ragdoll, but the feature that really struck Izuku was its exposed brain. Izuku yelling, watch out. He leapt at Ragdoll, tackling her to the ground as what looked to be a large clawed hammer was swung where her head used to be. Bakugo. A Nomu? Ragdoll immediately rolled out of the way with Izuku as the Nomu tried to stomp on them. Both of them quickly got to their feet. Izuku. Ragdoll, how can we beat it? Her eyes began to glow a rainbow color as she activated her quirk. They both dodged an attack from a chainsaw. It was then Izuku got a good look at it. In addition to its 2 arms, 6 more had sprouted from its back, 4 of which had chainsaws instead of hands, while the other 2 were a drill and hammer respectively. Bakugo leapt in and knocked it back with an explosion. Bakugo, yelling, anytime now. Ragdoll. It has 2 Quirks tool arms and a weak regeneration quirk. If the arms are destroyed, it can't form them again for 24 hours, even with the regeneration. Bakugo. Good to know. He went to attack one of the chainsaw arms only to have to retreat to avoid the drill arm. Izuku. It knows its own weaknesses. Ragdoll. Not all of them, there's a spot on its leg that's weaker than the rest of its body. Bakugo. Weaker doesn't mean much when it comes to these things. The 3 backed away as it charged at them. Izuku. I have an idea, but it's risky. Bakugo. I'm all ears. Izuku put a portal beneath its foot and another on a tree to make it trip. Izuku. We need its hammer. Bakugo on it. He rushed at the Nomu with explosions. As the Nomu began to recover from tripping, Bakugo descended upon it as fast as he could. He grabbed its hammer arm, locked his legs around it, and blasted the base with the most powerful explosion he could manage in his post-training state. Doing this, I managed to rip off the hammer arm before taking it and landing next to Izuku and Ragdoll. The Noma shrieked. Bakugo. Got it, are we doing what I think you're doing? Izuku nodded. Izuku. I'll immobilize it, and you'll throw its arm at the weak spot as hard as you can. Ragdoll. That should work. You'll need to hit the right thigh. Bakugo. Then let's get him. He grabbed the arm and jumped back to give Izuku room, and Ragdoll moved to the side. The Noma saw Izuku first and charged at him. Ragdoll threw a stick at the Noma, getting its attention. Ragdoll. You're one ugly dog. It then charged at her, before it once again fell into a portal. Izuku placed the other side on Ragdoll's wooden stand. Izuku yelling, now. Bakugo appeared in the air holding the arm in one hand and began to spin using explosions in the other. Bakugo, yelling, X catapult. The Noma began to stand up as Bakugo threw the hammer arm. Izuku yelling, stay down. He swung his right arm at the Noma's exposed brain, making it stumble and fall back into the portal. The hammer struck the Noma's leg that was through the portal, hitting the weak spot directly and taking the whole leg off. It fell backwards as Izuku closed the portals. It tried to stand, but without its leg it just kept falling. Bakugo landed next to Izuku. Bakugo. Not dead. Izuku. But not a threat. Its regeneration shouldn't be able to fix that, right? Ragdoll. Right. What about your arm? Izuku lifted it at the shoulder, but his elbow was limp. Izuku. The elbow joint broke, but it's good other than that. The Noma began to crawl towards them. Izuku. Disarm it if you can, Bakugo. Bakugo. Way ahead of you. He leapt above the Noma using an explosion and landed on its back as it was still focused on Ragdoll. He grabbed two of its chainsaw arms and destroyed them at the wrists. Bakugo. There, now it's no threat to the others. If it can get to them, they can take care of the other three. Now. He pointed upwards at several areas where smoke was rising. Bakugo. We should take care of whichever dumbass villain decided a forest fire was a good idea.
Let me know in the comments below if you guys want the next part. Also check out my other video that has been shown and left. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like and share this video. And have a fantastic day. Bye.